He spent over 2 decades exposing scams and frauds within the seedy poker and casino gambling communities and cultivating numerous enemies online. When he turned up dead, it took forensic science to narrow down hundreds of suspects to just one. "53-year-old Todd Witelis possessed a highly logical mind, and he liked to use it to solve problems. It initially led him to a career as a computer programmer, but eventually he moved on to the world of poker and gambling, playing at stakes where he could win or lose tens of thousands of dollars per night. After a few years witnessing scams, frauds, and injustices in the poker and gambling communities, and after being cheated himself, Todd developed a fascination with exposing the bad actors, at times acting as a player advocate. This earned him the respect of some peers, but it also made him a lot of enemies, especially those on the receiving end of his allegations, as well as others who felt his style was too confrontational. In addition, Todd was active on forums and social media, where he got himself into a lot of personal beefs, often spawning from his frequent expression of strong and controversial opinions. He once told a friend, "If I ever end up dead, I don't envy the detective who has to work on my case." On August 18th, 2025, his dark prediction came true. At about 7 o'clock in the evening, Todd told his son that he was going out to meet someone for some very important information. Something that might result in the biggest scandal the poker community has ever seen. When Todd did not return home that night, and when nobody heard from him for 24 hours, police began a search. On August 21st, 3 days after Todd's disappearance, his body was found near a hiking trail about 25 miles away from where he lived. He had been murdered. His car was found locked and undisturbed at a park a few miles away. Todd had been lured there with the promise of salacious information, with the intent to kill him when he arrived. Now, police had to figure out which of his enemies had the ability to set something like this up, and which one was actually guilty.
Well, the rumors of my death have been exaggerated. It said I died on August 18th. Well, sometime between the 18th and 21st, presumably the 18th. But we're past that here. We're on September 4th, 2025, as I record this show, and somehow I'm able to do it. Unless this is an AI that is continuing with the show upon my death, which is probably possible now. But it's not what's happening here, or at least so I say. In case you don't recognize that show, that was Forensic Files, with the actual narrator, Peter Thomas, who is dead, but he came out of death retirement to narrate that for me. And you may wonder, who was that one person? It said it narrowed down hundreds of suspects to just one with forensic science. Who was that one suspect, and why did they kill me? Well, unfortunately, Peter Thomas went back into the grave. I never got to find out. So I will remain in suspense on that one. Welcome to Poker Fraud Alert Radio. I am your host, the one mentioned at the beginning of that Forensic Files intro, Todd Druff Witelis. And like it said, I do cover the seedy gambling and poker worlds. And I do expose frauds and scams and unjust behavior. I really do that. So the guy wasn't too far off. And it's been about 4 weeks since we were last on. I have been to Vegas in the time in between. I'll tell you a little bit about that when we get to the Vegas segments. Obviously, there's a lot of things to talk about in this 4 weeks later edition of the show. I don't have a call-in number yet. I worked on it, though. That's the good news. I worked on it, but I did not find a good substitute for Skype. Every single thing that I was looking for to replace Skype, everything had some kind of flaw that made it not work with this show. I won't get into details, but it's funny because I had people telling me, oh, there's so many different alternatives to Skype out there. Use this, use that. But then when I would look into it, my needs were not being met. Or shall I say the show's needs were not being met. So I won't get into the whole story there, but I'm still working on it. I'll come up with some kind of solution to take calls here again. But you can text me in the meantime, 775-FRAUD-55, 775-372-8355 is how that breaks out. And if you're listening in the archives, don't worry, because you can text me then too. You can text me anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I will respond to you. You can text me about the show. You can text me about things you'd like to hear about on the show, and you can just text me general things that are on your mind. 775-372-8355. And if you text me during the live show, then I may read it on the air unless you ask me not to. There's no free roll tonight. The show is actually being broadcast at, right now it's 3:29 in the morning. So, obviously no free roll. Not many live listeners. This was not pre-announced. I just turned it on. The show, as always, will be posted in podcast format, also known as the archives. It'll be on iTunes, TuneIn, iHeartMedia, Spotify, Audible, Odyssey, Amazon Alexa, CastBox, and, of course, YouTube. Those are the platforms where you can find the show in podcast format. On Alexa, just say, Alexa, play Poker Fraud Alert Radio Podcast. It's kind of a mouthful, but that will get it done. And on YouTube, just search for Poker Fraud Alert, and you'll see the channel right there. And we post every show up and have been for a while now. And I try to keep the ads there to a minimum. I'm the one who assigns the spots where the ads take place, so I try to put them in a good spot where it doesn't interrupt anything and where they don't appear more than every 45 minutes or so. Because, ads kind of suck, but I have them up there to make a little money to pay for the expenses of this show and the Poker Fraud Alert server, which, by the way, it doesn't cover it, nor does the commission I get for Amazon when people click on the banner at the bottom before they buy something. So it's nice when people do things like that, but I'm just saying that does not cover the expenses, which are not super high or anything. It's a low-budget operation we have going here, but it does not make money. And it could make money if I were to sell ads or do endorsements for various sites. There's a lot of stuff I could do. There's been offers that have come my way, and I've turned them all down, with a few exceptions for things that are nothing where I'd have to worry about having to criticize them later if they engage in wrongdoing and have a conflict of interest, which I definitely don't want. So that's why I don't run an affiliate program here. That's why I don't run ads for poker sites or sports books. I've had those offers, and I've said no thanks. That is the reason. Anyway, let me give you the quick agenda, and then we're going to get going. Remember I told you in the last show that I got banned from X, formerly known as Twitter? I'm going to tell you about, as our first topic, that I got unbanned from X, aka Twitter. I told you on the last show that I got banned. You'll find out how I got unbanned, why I got unbanned, and why it was such a miracle that I got unbanned, because it's not an easy thing to do. Next, I will tell you a story about something that is currently happening involving Pokerstars that's pretty bad. They're outright ripping off U.S. players that once had a balance on there. I'm not talking about the ones that are playing the legalized Pokerstars state sites, but the original Pokerstars.com. They are ripping people off who are owed money, and they're not responding to them. It's very bad, and nobody wants to talk about it. I'm the only one who's talking about it, aside from the victims themselves. So I'll tell you that story, and I'll tell you where it stands at the moment. Then I'll tell you about how I entered the Circa Survivor contest again. I've been in it in some form for the prior 2 years. I'll tell you again what that contest is, and I will tell you about this year's entries, how many I did, and about the frustrating experience I had registering this year. And hopefully they'll correct some of these issues next year, but there were some frustrations I ran into that really should not have happened when I was registering. Then I'll tell you about DraftKings, and they've released a new set of sports betting rules which allow them to unfairly void your bets when you get a good line. It's very, very bad, this new rule, so I'll tell you about it. Next, I'll tell you about All-American Dave. Remember him? The disgraced WSOP food truck operator, All-American Dave? Well, he is back, but he's not at the World Series of Poker. He's not even in Vegas. He has opened up shop again in the isolated town of Mammoth Lakes, California. And guess what? If you had a balance with him, well, you can go all the way to Mammoth and use it. I'm not even kidding. So I'll tell you about the return of All-American Dave and what I think of his settlement offer to everybody to basically honor their balances at Mammoth. Then we will talk about Vanessa Kade, who we've talked about a number of times on this show. She is back in controversy. She claimed on her Twitter, in a very controversial tweet that got a lot of response from people, that she is currently being discriminated against based upon her gender in poker. If you don't understand why that's funny, wait till the segment, you'll understand. Then we will talk about what is happening in California to the sweepstakes-style gambling and poker sites, such as ClubGG, ClubWPTGold, GlobalPoker, and others. California has passed a law to ban them in this state. So I will tell you about that law. I'll tell you what the future is for these sites in California and whether they can survive without California. And by the way, ClubWPTGold has already made a change to their system, probably as a result of this. Finally, we'll talk about a story which you may have seen in the news because it actually made national news and then it died very fast, but they did not do very good investigative reporting on any of these sites. Any of these news sites, any of these news organizations, they think they're journalists, but they didn't do a very good job. So I did the job for them. So a founder of a Vegas-based AI brokerage firm got a bloody pig's head in the mail with a threatening note. And the note was supposedly from brokers who felt that he was threatening their business model. But is there more to the story? Well, I don't know for sure, but I have a theory. And I'll tell you that theory when we get to that segment. So that is our agenda for this late night, or shall I say early morning, of September 4th, 2025. So let's get right to it. As I mentioned on the last show, I got banned from X, formerly Twitter. This happened on August 2nd, and it was very weird and very unexpected. I was a very long-standing member of Twitter and X. I had an account since April 2009. I always followed the rules. I didn't ever spam. I didn't post engagement bait or clickbait. All of the content I posted was thoughtful, original, engaging. What I'm trying to say here is even if you didn't agree with what I had to say out there, at least if you look at the content I was putting out, it was legitimate content. It was my own original opinions. It was my own original reporting. It was my own original commentary. And I wasn't just parroting what others were saying. I was putting out stuff that I put a good deal of time thinking about. And I tried to only put things out there which I thought would be interesting and informative for the reader. And there's a lot of people who are on X/Twitter who don't do that. A lot of them will just post whatever gets them clicks. A lot of them will intentionally share misinformation because it's provocative. A lot of them will spam links to their stuff in replies to tweets that otherwise don't have to do with them. There's a lot of bots running rampant on there, as I'm sure you know. There's a lot of bad behavior on X where people are blatantly breaking the rules, either to scam or to get extra engagement to their monetized accounts and make extra money. Now, I did get monetized there in July, and that was nice. But I did not abuse that. I did not try to drive traffic to my account. I didn't post clickbait. I didn't do that. I wouldn't do that. Any post I make on there, I want it to be a quality post. I want it to be things that people will enjoy reading. I want it to be accurate, or at least as accurate as I can be. So I was very surprised that of all people to get banned from there, it was me. And the reason I was banned, a lot of people guessed that maybe I pissed someone off, maybe I just took something too far. No, it wasn't anything like that. At least I don't think it was. It emailed me. It told me that their bot banned me and that I was banned for something called inauthentic behavior, which I read to you on the last show on August 9th, is basically either botting or what they call platform manipulation. That's where you do something against the rules there to get engagement with your account, just where you're behaving dishonestly on there in some way. And I don't mean by posting like fake news. I mean like actually behaving dishonestly in order to get engagement to your account. That's what platform manipulation, inauthentic behavior, that's what that is. So I didn't do any of that. I never do that. Go through my whole account. You'll see, it's Todd Wittelis on Twitter. You'll see that I have done nothing like that. You'll see that there's not even the slightest suspicion you would have that a bot is posting for me. So I think you'll agree with me, no matter what you think of my opinions. I think you'll agree with me that I was following all rules of the system and I was not engaging in any kind of manipulation or spam or botting. But that didn't matter because the Twitter bot banned me anyway. You can file an appeal. I filed the appeal and it was ignored. I just didn't get an answer. I talked to some other people who had been removed from Twitter/X, and they gave me the bad news. They said there's no way out of it, especially these days. Even during the previous regime, before Elon bought it, it was very hard to get unbanned, and they would typically ignore appeals. But it's gotten even worse under Elon because he fired a large portion of the Twitter employee base, which, by the way, I agreed with. There was a lot of useless people working for Twitter at the time. There were a lot of people getting paid a lot of money to do very little. So he fired a lot of the non-essential employees there. I think he cut the workforce by 80%. And okay, I mean, in one way it's fine because the thing runs very similar to how it did before. And in fact, it's had some new innovations which it didn't have before. So as far as how he's run Twitter, for the most part, I'm a fan of it. And I think he's done a good job. But this is one area that he's done a horrible job because I was banned unfairly and I was not given a chance to really appeal. I filed an appeal, but I didn't get an answer. It didn't even say, okay, we went through your appeal, but here's why your appeal's rejected. Sorry, you stay banned. It just didn't answer me. And apparently that's very common too. So I was told by people that once you're banned here, you're not coming back. You're just gone. Once in a while, you can file the appeal, and within like a day or two, you're going to get a response if you come back. But if like a few days pass and you hear nothing, that's just the death of your account and there's no way out of it. You're stuck, your account's dead, and all you can do is either just stay off or come back on another account or go on to use an account that you already had that is still working. Those were my options. So I was pretty much resigned to the fact, it seemed, that I was not coming back there. But the topic I'm doing here is not about how I'm banned, it's about how I'm unbanned. So how did I get out of it? If everybody told me there's no way out of this once they don't respond to you for a few days, then how did I get unbanned? Did they finally respond to my appeal? Answer, no, was not the appeal. I got unbanned thanks to a connection. It helps to have connections in this world. You shouldn't need connections to make things happen, but sometimes you do. And after thinking about it, I realized I did have a connection. But you know what? I'm not the type of guy who reaches out to someone to use them for something, even if they can be useful. So if it's someone I'm talking to every day anyway, and I can have them help me out with something, then I might ask, as long as it's not too burdensome on them. But if it's someone that I talk to here and there, even if I've known them for a long time, I don't feel right messaging that person and saying, hey, what's up? Been a while. Hey, can you help me? I think that is not good form. I think that's not a nice thing to do. I think it makes people feel shitty. So while I did realize that there was someone who probably could help me, I did not want to ask them for help. So I was trying to get back on in other ways, and it was not working, and I realized it wasn't going to work. So finally I said, you know what? I'm not going to ask them for help, but I'll start a conversation with them, which I do every so often anyway, so it's not like I never talk to them and I only talk to them when I need something. In fact, this is the first time this person's done any kind of favor for me. But I reached out to this person. And by the way, I should say the last time I reached out to them, I was doing a favor for them. I saw something that I could help with and I volunteered. So, and that I got nothing out of that other than just the satisfaction of helping them because I saw they needed some help. So that may have actually influenced this as well. But that's not why I helped them. I didn't help them thinking, they can help me down the road. It just, I helped because I wanted to help. And this is not someone in poker, not someone in gambling. So you wouldn't know them. It's someone I've known for a very long time. But it's someone I don't talk to all that often anymore. I talk to, here and there, but it's not someone I talk to every day or every week. So anyway, I just decided I'm going to message them and just kind of say, hey, it's kind of crappy. I'm banned from Twitter now. Like, not, hey, can you help me? I just telling them what's going on. And if they go, oh, that sucks, then I would leave it at that. I wasn't going to go, hey, I know you can help me with this, or maybe you can. Can you help me? If they were not going to offer, I wasn't going to ask. If they were going to offer, then I would take it. I was just going to tell them what's happening. If they want to help, then they can. If they don't want to offer to help, I don't expect them to, because it's not their responsibility to help me, just because I know them and they might have the ability to do so. So I told them, and then they responded to me and said, hey, well, what are the details? Why did it happen? Can you send me a screenshot of the email you got? And so, of course, I sent everything. And they said, okay, well, hang on, I might be able to do something here. And something was done. So I got unbanned. You might ask, does this person work for X? I'm not going to answer that. Of course, it's someone with some connection to X. It's not just a random person. I'll tell you, it's either someone who works there or someone who knows someone who works there. But it was someone I knew had the potential to be able to help me in this situation, but I didn't want to be an ingrate and show up and ask them for this. So that was the way I decided to approach it. And as I said, I have a feeling, they didn't tell me this, but I have a feeling that they thought about how last year I was nice and helped them with something. I just kind of volunteered my help when they were having a hard time. It wasn't financial, by the way. I didn't give this person any money or anything like that. It was just a matter they needed some help with. And I helped them just to be nice, and they didn't ask me for the help. So they probably remembered that and said, you know what? Todd helped me when I needed some help, and I didn't ask him for any help. And so now he could be helped, and let me help him. If that's why it happened, great. If it's just because it's someone I knew for a long time and they felt I deserved to be back on X, then great. If they just decided to be nice, then great. I appreciate very much what this person did for me. They didn't have to. I'm someone who's of the belief that nobody owes me anything. I don't believe that I should expect anyone's help at any time. And I've told you that before. I expect fair treatment. I expect people to be respectful. I expect people not to do harmful things to me. But I don't expect people to help me with things. If anyone does ever give me help, I greatly appreciate it. So I really appreciate what this person did. And it was definitely because of them. Not even 99%. It's 100% because of them that I am back on X. And I would not be back if I didn't know that person. I got lucky because I happened to know someone who could help. And it's funny, not even anyone from poker or from gambling and nothing like that. Someone from quite some time ago. So I appreciate the help I received. I'm back on X. Now, there's one little issue here. I have an account now that may be a little bit restricted because I got a weird message like 5 minutes after I was reinstated that I've been restricted again for platform manipulation. But I can easily log in. There's no ban in place like there was before. I can do everything. I'm not restricted from any function on the site, and people see my tweets because I'm getting interaction. But it did kind of imply that it's not going to amplify my tweets as much, which kind of sucks because I had a pretty good engagement rate on there as far as people seeing what I would write and engage with it. Some of it was because I was making quality tweets, but some of it was also because the site was recognizing that I was making quality tweets and giving my tweets more visibility. And now I'm afraid the visibility is not as high because of it thinks I'm manipulating the platform again. Now, I do have an idea, also thanks to this person, by the way, I do have an idea why it thinks that I am manipulating the platform. And I was told that the system thinks that I am running scripts to somehow manipulate the system, which I'm not. So I thought about it, and I realized I did have an ad blocker running. And the ad blocker, even though it's a mainstream ad blocker, may have been doing some weirdness or shenanigans in the background that caused Twitter to think this. Now, I Googled that ad blocker and haven't seen anyone else with this problem. But anyway, to be safe, I turned off that ad blocker. And hopefully that'll stop the problem. And it did say my restriction is, quote, temporary, though it would not define what temporary meant. So temporary could mean forever. It could mean for the next year. It could mean just for that day. I have no idea. So I don't know if I have any kind of lower engagement that's artificially set because of this. Or maybe if it was just for that day, I don't know. I'll have to see next time I put out some tweet that I expect to get a lot of response. I just haven't had anything to say that was going to get tremendous response. Though, as you'll see, I have been posting content of trying to get engagement again. Again, not through engagement bait, but I'm trying to post quality content that I think people will like. And it hasn't gotten a tremendous response. But I will say I posted a tweet right when I came back explaining what happened and where I was and how I got back. And that did get a good number of views. So people are seeing, I think I got like 11,000 views to that. So that's not bad. That's not like viral, but it's not bad. So I don't know. I don't know where I stand exactly, but at least my account works. Again, thank you very much to the person who helped me. They're probably not going to hear this, but thank you very much to them anyway. And anytime someone does something like this, I appreciate it immensely. And I would do the same. Like if I were in the position they were, I would help someone get back on in my shoes. But the bottom line is they didn't have to. I didn't even ask them to do it. And they just volunteered to do something nice for me because they saw how upset I was about it. That was nice of them. And it's also a lesson that if you do nice things for people, just because you see you can help, even though they haven't asked for your help, if you just do nice things and help when you can, sometimes later you'll get something out of it anyway. Not that you should do nice things because you'll get something out of it, but because sometimes if you treat people well and do nice things for them, then sometimes you may get something when you really need it in the future that only they can help with. But I wasn't thinking that at all because, as I said, this wasn't someone I ever thought I'd be asking for help. It just happened they could help here. I never pictured I'd get banned from X. Like, why would I? So I'm glad that's over, at least mostly over. So you can follow me again at Todd Witellis, and everything's good. Moving on to what I guess I consider our main topic, I want to tell you about the Pokerstars scandal going on, but the problem is nobody knows it's a scandal. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody of any note is really trying to amplify what's going on since I brought it out. There is a collective snooze about this. No poker media is talking about this. And the Pokerstars pros are not helping with this. Now, this hasn't happened to me. In fact, nobody who has been victimized by this is close to me in any way. So I guess in a way, the good news is this is not hurting me or any of my friends. But this is hurting poker pros in the United States, ones that I know. I know them as acquaintances, but I still know them. And it sucks, and it's wrong. And I don't like it. So I offered to help. I actually dragged my feet a little bit with helping with this one just because I kept having other things come up. But anyway, I finally decided that it's time to speak out about this, even though, again, it has nothing to do with me. But this is really bad, and it's something that honestly deserves a lot more attention. So as I'm sure you know, Pokerstars, which was once the biggest online poker site in the world, it is no longer. Now it is GG Poker. But for a long time in the 2000s and in the early 2010s, it was the biggest poker site in the world by far. And it was run very well. And it had great software and very good support. Everybody liked Pokerstars. It was owned at the time by Isai Scheinberg, who really cared about poker, who really put pride into the site. That was the old Pokerstars. Eventually, it was bought and the people who bought it were not as ethical as Isai Scheinberg, and it started to go downhill. Now, as you know, if you've listened to this show or followed poker news at all, in 2011, there was a huge event called Black Friday, where Pokerstars, Full Tilt, and UB, the three biggest online poker sites at the time, all got busted by the U.S. Department of Justice. And it was because they were violating the UIGEA, which was the law passed in 2006 that essentially made any form of online gambling illegal in the U.S. And at that point, a lot of sites left the U.S. market. Those three did not, and they were all quite large when they were busted in April of 2011. And that day is called Black Friday for that reason. It was on Friday, April 15th. Basically, the law they were violating was taking people's deposits to play real money poker. That was the actual violation. Offering the poker itself was not so much the violation. And processing withdrawals for people who were cashing out, that's actually fine. But it was taking the money in the first place, taking the deposits, that was the violation. So not only were these sites busted, but there were indictments issued for the main people involved with running these sites and for the main people involved in the payment processing for these sites. And in fact, we had one of those payment processors. Chad Ellie, on this show back in 2012. And that was a very interesting interview. And I believe he still listens to the show, too. He kind of became a fan of the show after that. So that was back in 2011. And as I said, since then they got bought. In the meantime, Pokerstars was open to U.S. players and pretty much any players if they were physically standing in a place where Pokerstars was still operating. So you could be an American on Pokerstars after Black Friday if you were physically in a country where they were serving. So, for example, Canada. If you crossed over to Canada, you could play on Pokerstars. I think they had to re-enable your account, but you could play on there, even if you were just visiting. And same with if you were traveling to Europe. You could play while you were in Europe, and then when you got back home to the U.S., you couldn't play anymore. Interestingly enough, Pokerstars got embedded in my brain so much, and I played so much on there. And in fact, a lot of you first became aware of me by watching me on Pokerstars and the high-limit games there in the 2000s. But I became just so ingrained in Pokerstars that still to this day, I will sometimes have dreams that I'm somehow able to play on Pokerstars while still in the U.S. in some shenanigans way. And I feel weird, like I'm getting away with something. And then I wake up and I realize I'm not really playing there. But I still have Pokerstars dreams set in the present. The reason I'm telling you this is because this whole background, this whole backstory fits into what's going on today. This injustice, this very bad thing happening today that's screwing U.S. poker pros who are owed a lot of money by them. So as I said, there were people who had their accounts reopened so they could play when they went abroad. I never did it because I wasn't going abroad much. It just wasn't worth the trouble. So I got all my money off of there. They paid everybody out. I got my money, and that was it. I never put money back on. I never asked them about reopening my account. I really have never played on there for real money since Black Friday, which is now 14 and a half years ago. However, as I said, some people did. One of the people who did was Brock Parker. Now, you may or may not know who he is. He was better known in the 2000s than he is today. He was originally known online as T. Soprano, and of course that was based upon TV character Tony Soprano. So he was T. Soprano because he was a big fan of that show. And he was one of the early kind of high middle stakes limit hold'em players back when those were the biggest games offered online. I'm talking about way back in the year 2000, 2001, 2002, in those days. He was known, prior to being T. Soprano, he was known as Bob Cards, even though his name's not Bob, his name's Brock. And then he switched from Bob Cards to T Soprano when he went on Pokerstars. So he was best known as Bob Cards in the early 2000s, and from the early to mid 2000s on, he was better known as T Soprano. He also won 2 World Series of Poker bracelets in the 2000s. He has been a professional poker player for a long time. He used to play mainly cash, but now it seems like he's transitioned to be more of a tournament player. He is a good player. I've played with him a lot over the years. He's part of the whole Magic the Gathering group who came into the game in the 2000s. There was a big crossover of Magic the Gathering players. Some of them became good poker players. So he's part of that whole group, including David Williams and Ben Yu and Gabriel Nassif and Justin Bonomo, the best-known one of the whole group, Eric Froelich, and of course Brock Parker here, who I'm talking about. And there's a lot more of them, too. A lot of these former Magic players, a lot of whom were friends with one another. In fact, when Eric Froelich made the final table and won the first World Series of Poker event I ever played, I think Brock was there watching him on the rail. And I know that whole group was there watching again at a limit hold'em final table I made in 2013 when 2 of them actually made it, including Justin Bonomo. So anyway, he's part of that group. He's never been a friend of mine, but we've always gotten along okay. He's been very aware of me for more than 2 decades. I've been aware of him. We played a lot of hands together. We've never had any issues with one another. He's just an acquaintance, really. Not a friendly acquaintance, not an unfriendly acquaintance, just an acquaintance. But he's someone that I believe. He's never been involved in any scandal. He's never been accused of any wrongdoing. He's known as an honest guy. So this is not someone that I would ever picture would come to me or come to X with bullshit or with only half the story. Usually what he says is just pretty straightforward. So when he came forward with this story, I immediately thought, wow, this has got to be true, and Pokerstars is probably screwing him and many other people. So Brock did continue playing on Pokerstars after Black Friday. I don't know for how long, but he was playing, and then at some point, they made the decision to shut down his account because it wasn't being used enough. And I think some of that might have to do with law in Europe and dormant accounts and what they have to do at that point. There's a lot of data laws over there, some of which are good and some of which are overreaching. I think this is the latter. But anyway, I believe they probably had to close his account because of some legal matter with how inactive he had become. He actually briefly moved to Canada in 2011 and updated his account that he was a Canadian resident at that time, though still a U.S. citizen. He had a Canadian address and bank account. And for about 6 years, he played on and off on there, either from the beginning where he moved to Canada and then where he left Canada. I don't know what year that was, but he came back either to Canada or to other places where Pokerstars was available and played from there. So he played for about 6 years, and he had last played on Pokerstars in 2017. So yes, it has been a long time since he last played on there, and he had a balance. In 2021 and 2022, Pokerstars asked him to send in some documents to verify his identity. They said, you haven't logged in so long. We just need to make sure that everything's cool here. So he did. He followed their instructions. He sent in the document. He thought that was that. They did not ever tell him that they are going to close his account. It had been 4 to 5 years since he last played on there. It would have been reasonable for them to close his account. Of course, give him the money, but it would be reasonable to shut the account down and kick him the money. But they didn't say anything about that, apparently. They just said, hey, send us these documents to prove that you're who you say you are, which is kind of a weird thing to do. Like, why would that change in 4 years? But he did it. And remember, he was still listed with a Canadian address because he hadn't changed it. He'd last been on in 2017. And then he said, oh, by the way, I only have U.S. banking. I don't have a Canadian bank anymore. So how do I get my money off? And then they just stopped answering him, which is weird, right? He's like, they emailed him for identity purposes, just out of nowhere, in 2021, 2022. Then he talked about getting the money off, but then asked, hey, can you still send to U.S. Bank? And they're like, yep, you know what? Just not answer him. Just don't answer him. Just let him go. And he had tens of thousands of dollars on there. So he thought, okay, well, I go to Canada sometimes. So eventually I'll be there and I'll find some way to get it off there. I don't know what way he was thinking of doing it, but he figured once he's physically in Canada, maybe he'll be in better shape to do so, and he won't need to deal with support and their non-responsiveness. Which, by the way, there's no excuse for it. They should always answer him. They shouldn't just ghost him. It's not like he was being abusive or that they told him no and he just wasn't taking no for an answer. They just stopped answering him, and he's trying to get his money off. So he waited until he got to Canada, and it took a while, but in the end of 2024, he was planning a trip to Niagara Falls on the Canadian side and wanted to see if he could get his money off. And again, they asked for identity verification. He did it. So then, about a week later, in January 2025, he got an email saying his account was unlocked. But the weird thing was, the email did not come from Pokerstars.com. It came from the separate New Jersey portion of Pokerstars saying that his New Jersey account was now unlocked. He's like, what? New Jersey? Like, what does this have to do with New Jersey? He never had a New Jersey account. Or maybe he did, but whatever it was, had nothing to do with this. He, I guess, never had any money on New Jersey, at least. So he's like, no, I want T Soprano to be cashed out because that has 5 figures in there. And they said, well, this has been closed a while ago for inactivity. He's like, okay, that's fine. Get me my money. And they just were not getting it done. They just kept writing, thank you for contacting us. We forwarded your query to the team responsible for handling this matter. You will receive a reply as soon as possible. Your patience is highly appreciated. That's all he got, like some form of that over and over and over again. He even tried talking to the PokerStars account on Facebook Messenger. And then he got another email from PokerStars New Jersey. So he tried to have them help. And they just responded saying, well, yeah, we can help. We've unlocked your New Jersey account. Can you imagine how infuriating this is? You have tens of thousands of dollars locked up there. You just want to get it off, and they keep kicking you over to the New Jersey version where you have zero. So then he said, well, okay, if they're so obsessed with New Jersey, I'll just get my PokerStars New Jersey account all updated with the correct info and try to get it through there. And then they said, thanks for reaching out. Everything you've sent us now is with the team handling your case. In some instances, we may need more time to get back to you with a result. Either way, we'll be in touch with you to let you know when the review is complete. So then, again, just nothing. This last email was from the, quote, anti-fraud team. And he was not accused of any fraud. They weren't accusing him of using a VPN. They weren't accusing him of cheating. Nothing like that. Like, they weren't alleging any wrongdoing. I don't even know why the anti-fraud team was involved. But they just ghosted him. So 2 months later, after being ghosted and the best he'd get back was a form letter about, please be patient, we'll get back to you, he posted on Twitter tagging some of the PokerStars team pros that maybe one of them could help him. Now, you would think at that point, because he's not a nobody, this isn't just some random who you don't know if you can believe. This is a guy with 2 bracelets who was one of the best-known early online poker players. Definitely some of these team pros had to know who he is. He's not like an A-list top-known name. He's not a household name, but he's somewhat that people know in the poker community. There's no way that they don't know who he is, and there's no way that they thought, okay, well, this Brock guy's shady, because he's never been accused of any kind of wrongdoing. He doesn't get involved with any kind of shady stuff. He doesn't lie. He's not that type of guy. He's a very straightforward dude. And I say this as someone who's never been his friend. So anyway, the whole team of pros there ignored him. They didn't respond to him. They didn't try to help, which I think is shitty, because if I were a pro there and I saw this happening, I'd say, yeah, this isn't my department, but let me try to get you over to somebody who can help. Because again, it's not like PokerStars decided he can't get his money because he did something wrong, or he waited too long, blah, 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 and he doesn't like the decision, but that's the way it is. They're saying they're processing it, and they're just not answering him. They're just leaving him up in the air. They're just not getting it done. There's never an excuse for that. He was still getting no response all the way through the month of March, all the way through April. Got no response. From his posts on X, he started to get responses, but not from Pokerstars, from others who were in the same boat, and I saw them too. I was discussing with him in April about helping, but as I said, I had a lot of different things going on then. And every time I thought I'd make the time to help here, I just kept having other things come up. So that's why it didn't really happen. I suggested that maybe he could go to Pokerstars New Jersey and tell them he's going to make a report to gaming there and get their license in trouble if they don't help him. But it's also possible that they would say, go ahead and do it because this has nothing to do with us. This has to do with the international version of Pokerstars, which we are not operating with. So good luck with that. You can't report to New Jersey something that didn't happen in New Jersey. They may say that and they may be right. I don't know how gaming in New Jersey or another state where Pokerstars is licensed would handle that. But I said that's a possible angle he could pursue. Anyway, he also emailed them in late April, letting them know that others have identified on X that they're having the exact same problem. He said he let them know how unethical they've been about this whole thing, and I agree. So I tried to go to some people who I knew that previously worked at Pokerstars and brought this up and said, what do you guys think of this? I know you can't help, but what do you think of this? And these people were kind of skeptical. These people felt that what happened was that he let the time lapse too long, and that by European law, that they not only had to close his account, but they had to delete all of his info, because they do have very strict data privacy laws there, which require the deletion of customer info that when the customers go inactive for a certain amount of time. So it was being suggested to me by two different people that what probably happened to him was that during that long period of inactivity, they deleted his account entirely and just had no access to any of his balances or anything. And that kind of made sense because he did tell me that they were telling him they couldn't find his balances and that they were asking him for proof of what his balance was on their site, which is weird. Imagine you email a poker site and say, hey, I'd like my money, and they say, well, how much money do you have here again? So that was some of it too, that they were claiming that they were looking for the info. And I thought that was weird they didn't have it in a backup somewhere. So the people I was talking with weren't very sympathetic to him, saying, well, look, he hasn't been on in so long. They had to delete it. This is his problem for not getting his money off earlier, and kind of sucks, but tough luck on him. But he did note to me that they agreed that they owe him the money. In fact, he showed me an email from July 2022, where they said that he has a, quote, large pending balance available and that he could withdraw the funds. I see the email right in front of me here. And he said, in response, I've tried contacting you about this numerous times. I'm currently in the U.S. and can't log into an account. He was trying to get them to help him get the money off like they were offering, and then they were just ghosting him. So it's not like they've been saying since 2021, 2022, hey, sorry, you haven't been on in 4 to 5 years. By the law here, we had to remove your account and everything associated with it, so we don't even know what your balance was, so tough luck. They weren't saying that. They're like, no, we see a pending large balance here, so get the money off. They were saying this to him. But then he says, okay, let's do it, and then they weren't doing it. So whether they had to delete things or not, they were acknowledging they owed him the money. Then he got a weird email in February. We're going back a little bit, but in February 2025, they wrote to him, to gain access to the funds, and this was actually from Stars, New Jersey, we ask you to provide the following documents: a copy of your recent utility bill showing your name, blah, 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 and a copy of previous communication containing the username or any other way to confirm the account ownership, which is kind of a weird request. But anyway, like they're saying, yeah, just give us the stuff, you'll get your money, and then he was never getting it. Then on May 13th, he got the most promising email, again from the New Jersey version of Pokerstars. But it said, thank you for reaching out. In order to proceed with the cash out of your funds, please send us the following details: your bank account number, your ABA routing number, the ACH account type, checking or savings. Once we receive this information, we'll be processing your request. Okay, right? Okay, that sounds good. Well, he did. He sent it all. He got nothing. They went back to ignoring him, went back to ghosting him, just weren't answering him. So they would not even acknowledge how much they're going to send him, nor did they send anything. He got another email saying they could start an e-check withdrawal to his bank and ask for the same info. Once again, he sent it to them, and they didn't answer him. Now we're in late May of 2025. Then, here's the funniest one, arguably. He finally got an email. Hello, we have started your $301 withdrawal, which will send to your account number, blah, blah, blah. Oh, my God. He's been trying to get 5 figures off of there, and he finally, after 3 to 4 years of trying to get them to give him his money and being ignored and getting false promises over and over and over again, they finally say, okay, we've started withdrawal. Good news, bad news, it's for $301 for some reason. Why $301? It's not like they're saying, oh yeah, we researched it and that's all you're entitled to. It's just this arbitrary small number that they're sending him. $301. And the end of the email said, got any questions? Just ask. We're here to help. Yeah, I'm sure he had some questions. On July 10th, he said to them, I responded multiple times with no response. It's an absolute joke that you think there's 300 in my account. I received emails saying I had a large outstanding balance. It's insulting, this random $300 number that you pull out of thin air. So yeah, like, he's totally right here. Can you imagine how frustrating? He's been going at this for 3 or 4 years to get his damn money that they've been offering, and then they won't send it to him, and then finally they send him $300? Why? $301, not just $300. So I recently decided to try to start helping because I should have done it before. Things just kept coming up. So I finally decided to get involved here and assist as much as I could. On August 21st, he tried to make a post to X himself about the matter yet again. Now, he has 1,855 followers, so he has fewer than I do. But he said, definition of insanity, etc., posting this. But Pokerstars closed my account, and he tagged them so they'll see it, with a 5-figure balance without any warning before or telling me after. I found this out in December. They told me they would pay me but are ignoring me. Anyone help me or tag someone that can. And they responded on August 21st when he posted this. Hi, we're really sorry to hear what you're going through. We just sent you a DM so we can look into this and try to help. Please check your messages. Sound promising? Obviously not. You know, he's heard this over and over again. A second guy responded, named Daniel Buzgon, Buzgon. Send me a DM to Pokerstars. You guys did the same thing to me, and you guys refused to give me any help for the last 9 months. But you keep telling me the proper people are looking into it. That's exactly what they've been telling Brock the whole time. Except it's been longer than 9 months for Brock. And by the way, this Daniel Buzgon is not the only one I've seen saying this besides Brock. I've seen other people responding to Brock, whose names I recognize, that are having the same issue. So who knows how many people they did this to? And it just doesn't make any sense. Again, these are not people who are refusing to abide by a decision. These are not people who did something wrong and now are trying to get something negative reversed. These are people who are told, here, we're going to give you your money. And they say, okay, good, send it. And then it's just not sent to them. And they're jerked around for many months, or in some cases, for years. This is Pokerstars doing this. Pokerstars, the one-time biggest site in the world. Pokerstars, which is still a very large online poker site. And Pokerstars, which has licensed and regulated online poker rooms in the United States right now. They're doing this to U.S. poker pros who are owed money. What could possibly be the reason for this other than either incompetence or intentional incompetence so they can keep people's money? I don't know. But this is awful. Now, you would think that the poker pros who are sponsored pros on there, who get paid to represent Pokerstars and always promoted, you would think they would give a shit about this and at least try to help. Again, it's not their problem. It's not their responsibility. I don't feel they have to help. They didn't do this to Brock and the others who are in this situation, but they are promoting Pokerstars on their X account a whole lot. And you would think if they see their fellow poker pros are getting cheated by Pokerstars and not getting their money and being treated like dirt and ignored and ghosted when they're trying to withdraw, you'd think that they might at that point go to whoever their handler is at Pokerstars and say, hey, I'm seeing these issues. It's not a good look for you guys. And could you maybe help? It'll be a win-win. These guys will get their money, and then you won't have the negative press against you from these people calling you out. And look, they could say it in a nicer way than that. They could just say, hey, can you help these people? They're fellow poker pros. They just want to get their money off. Can you help them? But crickets. They did not respond to Brock. And you know what? They didn't respond to me either. I sent public tweets and tagged them. No answer. I sent some private messages. No answer. And these people didn't say back, sorry, Todd, don't want to deal with it. They didn't say, sorry, wish I could help but can't. They didn't give any direction. And some of these people are ones who I've gotten along with traditionally. Some of these people I messaged are ones that I thought are friendly towards me, at least. Not friends or anything, but people who I've spoken with before in a friendly or very cordial fashion. And I'm talking about in DM. That we've interacted before, had nice conversations, have always been respectful towards one another, those type of people. And somehow they don't want to get involved here. They don't want to respond. They're just pretending it's not happening. I'm not going to name names, but just look up who the Pokerstars pros are. You can figure it out. It's all of them. All of them. They will not respond. And I don't know why that is. Because if you're going to take a check to promote Pokerstars to your fans and followers, then I do believe it's your moral responsibility to throw a bit of assistance to fellow poker pros when they run into a situation like this. That's not your job description. That's not what you're being paid for. You don't have to dedicate your life to it. But would it hurt to reach out to Brock and these other people and say, hey, I'll try to get this to somebody there to help you? I mean, that's what was done for me as far as my X account. That's why I'm back on X, because someone I knew chose to help me and my account was brought back because it was unjustly banned. So I got help from someone who wanted to be nice and help. Why don't these poker pros help Brock and the others who are being screwed? Why don't they? So all of these poker pros who represent Pokerstars and have ignored me here and have ignored Brock here. You could say, oh, well, maybe they don't like you, Druff. Maybe you think they like you, but they really think you're a dick behind the scenes. Maybe behind the scenes they hate you and they just don't want a confrontation. Okay, maybe. I don't think so. But, okay, maybe. But then why aren't they answering him? He's not my friend. They know he's not my friend. There's others involved I don't even know. People I barely know, but I know of. Why don't they just go directly to these people? They don't have to help me. I don't need help. I'm not the one in the situation. So why are they not answering? Well, only they know, but I think I know. Here's my best guess. I think they're not answering because they don't want to rock the gravy boat. They don't want to get involved here. Because once they get involved here, then they might be afraid that if Pokerstars really is screwing these people, then they'll be in a situation where they have to think about quitting Pokerstars in order to preserve their reputation. Or if they don't, then their reputation will take a hit. But if they just ignore the whole thing, if they hear about injustice going on, where people are not getting their money and they're being jerked around for 5 years, if they hear about it, and if they get messages about it, and they choose just to ignore the messages about it, then they can claim ignorance. Oh, I just didn't see the message. Oh, I meant to read the message, but I forgot to go back and read the message. Or I meant to do something about this, but I got really busy. They have plausible deniability if they don't respond. But the second they respond, well, then they're expected to do at least a little bit, at least to try to get him over to the right people. So nobody wants to do this because they might be afraid that if they try to get this to the right people and the right people say, nope, we're not doing it, we're not helping, no way, no how, these people aren't getting their money, F them, or even a more polite form of that, then these people are in a weird position, because then they'll be asked, well, did you ask? And then if the answer is like, well, we did, but they don't want to help. Well, why don't they want to help? Is this a scammy company? And then that whole conversation has to occur, and all of a sudden they're going to be questioned as to why they're staying on as pros. So if they just ignore the whole thing, then they don't have to worry about any kind of negative fallout coming down on them if Pokerstars chooses not to do the right thing. That is my guess here. That's why normally responsive people are ignoring me and ignoring him and ignoring everybody else about this situation. By the way, same thing regarding all of the poker news media. They're not covering it, I'm guessing, because they don't want to lose any affiliate deals they have with Pokerstars or any advertising that Pokerstars is doing or will be doing with them. So I think everybody just wants to steer clear of it, because there's not a whole lot of victims. This is a very specific niche group of people. I think that since it's not a tremendous number of people who are getting screwed, it's easier to just kind of wash your hands of the whole thing and pretend it's not going on. And because nobody who's involved here has a tremendous Twitter following, nobody's a huge name in poker, even though these are known pros, you can just screw them and probably no one's going to say anything if everybody kind of has the same goal in mind to sweep this under the rug. Not very nice. Not very nice at all. I will say that Brock told me that he got the most encouraging email yet. Now, of course, they've made false promises before, but he got the most encouraging email yet, that they have escalated it and really going to take it seriously this time. So I hope so. I hope this has a happy ending. I hope I can give you an update next show that Brock has gotten his money. And also, if he gets his money, then I'm going to post an update and say, look, anybody else who got screwed like this, you should look for this to get escalated too. And maybe even Brock can help get those same people to help the people who are in the same position as him. And I have a feeling he'll do that, because if anyone knows the frustration of this, it's him. And I think he's gone through it the worst of anybody. So what an ugly and shitty and frustrating situation. And it really just makes me unhappy with some parts of this community that they just want to ignore this. And I think for selfish reasons. Not good. Not good at all. Moving on, I want to tell you about the Circa Survivor contest that I have entered again. I talked about it last year. This is actually my third year in the contest. The first year that I entered the contest, I did not put that much money into it. I was part of a group of people who bought only 3 tickets. Each ticket is $1,000. I was part of a group of people that were associated with Poker Fraud Alert. Some of them were forum posters, some were radio listeners, but I joined a group of people from the site and bought in a certain percentage of these 3 tickets, and then we'd all get together on the phone and make decisions about what teams we're going to pick each week. And one of the tickets, one of the 3 actually got fairly deep, and then we had a very, very tough choice as to which 2 teams, of 2 teams, which we'd be selecting, and we ended up going the wrong way. They ended up both being very close games, coming down to basically the last play, and had we gone the other way, we would have won. The way we did, we barely lost. So one barely won, one barely lost. It was an incredibly tough decision, and we happened to go the wrong way, so that was the end of us there. But that encouraged me, once I was more familiar with the whole process, the way the thing operated, the proper strategy to employ, or at least one of the proper strategies to employ. I said, you know what? That was interesting being part of that group, but I think in the 2024-25 season, I'll go it alone. And I was encouraged by how deep we managed to run with that 1 ticket. And I said, it's too bad we didn't have more than 1 ticket this deep, because then we could have done one with one of the teams we were considering and one with the other. So this way, if one of the 2 won, we would still move on. So that's the good thing about having multiple tickets, is if you have a really tough decision, you can split them. So I said, why don't I just buy more tickets? And my plan was to buy the maximum of 10 tickets for $10K, and then try to get as many deep as I can get, and then sell some of the tickets, which you can actually do. It's kind of an informal thing, but it's not against the rules. But you just have to facilitate it yourself. but you can actually sell tickets to others who want to buy in late. And of course, they pay way more money because it's based upon the equity of the ticket. So you start out with every ticket having $1,000 equity, but let's say 90% of the players have been eliminated, then your equity on that ticket is $10,000. And if 95% have been eliminated, your equity is $20,000. Now, this is a winner-take-all contest, and I wish it weren't. I actually wish there were some lower prizes because it's just so hard to win. There's just so much variance in this because, almost everybody loses. And if you buy 10 tickets, that's $10K down the drain. And it's different than like the World Series of Poker main event where, in a way that's kind of got like a lottery look to it too, that the chance of making the final table and getting 7 figures is pretty small. With all those entrants, with 10,000 entrants, it's pretty hard to make the final 9, especially with a lot of the players there being good. But still, if you make it to the top 15%, you make some money. And as you get deeper and deeper, you make more and more money. And as you've seen, I've gotten deep in a number of the years. So I wish the Circa Survivor were more like that, but it's not. It's a winner-take-all, and the only way the prize is split at all is if multiple people make it to the end, as they did last year. Now, briefly, the way it works is you make 1 pick per ticket per week on a team you think is going to win. They don't have to win by a point spread. They just have to win the game. This is in the NFL. The gimmick here is that, number one, if you lose even once, you're out. So you have to win every single pick. And you're going to end up making 20 picks to get to the end. So can you imagine you have to go 20-0? It's not easy to do. It's very hard. There's no point spread, but it's still very hard. And it becomes even harder because there's an additional restriction in that you can only pick a team to win once. So you pick a team to win. If they win, you can't use that team again. And if they lose, then that ticket is dead. And there's 20 picks you'll be doing. 1 for each week of the NFL season, which is 18 weeks. And then 2 additional picks, one on the Thanksgiving weekend, which is Thursday and Friday. So it's not really the weekend, the Thanksgiving, Thursday and Friday. And Christmas Day have additional picks as well, to be a total of 20 picks. So you have to strategize. You can't just do what you think is the best pick of the week. You have to strategize of when you're using each team because there's only so many good teams that you can expect to win. So the obvious thing is I'm going to pick the best team with the weakest opponent. I'll just look at the point spreads that the sports books all post and take the one with the biggest point spread. And that's a simple way to do it if you know nothing about the NFL. But the problem is once you've done that, then you can't pick that team again. So you've got to look at the right order to select things, and there's a big strategy to that. And as I learned in last year's contest, there's a second strategy that I hadn't really thought of before, and that is because so many people are basically picking with a relatively similar strategy, then you're going to succeed and fail with a large portion of the field, which you really don't want because, remember, if you make it to the very end by some miracle, you split the prize with whoever else does. So if you're going to do your picks in a very typical way, to where anyone with half a brain would do, then you're going to end up either losing or getting to the end with a tremendous number of people there. Last year, the problem was there were a lot of upsets on big favorites that were expected to win, and then they lost, and a very large percentage of the field was gone after a few weeks, including most of my tickets, and my 10 tickets did not make it very far. Let's just say that. It was gone pretty fast, all 10. And it was very depressing. I shouldn't say very depressing. It's just gambling. But it was frustrating because I put $10K into it. I didn't get the fun of running deep. Just kind of smacked out early. So I thought about this year. And by the way, there's a listener of Poker Fraud Alert who also played. He was not part of that group I was with in 2023. And he was not involved with my picks last year. I did it myself. But he had his own tickets, and he was making picks that were more off the beaten path, and that worked for him, especially in a year with a lot of upsets. And he made it fairly deep. He did eventually lose, but he made it fairly deep. And his tickets had a lot of equity at one point. And I think he only had 3. So I kind of drew inspiration from this guy. And I thought, you know what? I want to play again, but I think I'm going to try to go more off the beaten path this year, at least with some of the tickets. But how many tickets should I buy? I don't want to get like one or two. It just doesn't give me enough flexibility. I'd also like to maybe sell some if I get deep, and then it becomes like a free roll for me. And also, I just want to have enough choices. I don't want to have a situation like it was in 2023, where it was like a toss-up which way I go, and I picked the wrong way. Well, it wasn't just me. We all picked the wrong way when we came to the decision. So it would have been really nice to have 2 tickets there. So I wanted to have enough tickets, but at the same time, did I really want to put $10K again into something where it's very likely I'm just going to lose at some point, even if I manage to run deep? Now, again, yes, I can sell some if I can find a buyer, but still, the greatest chance is I'm just going to lose the 10K, which kind of sucks. That's not chump change, obviously. So I've tried to come up with a number in my head. I went to Vegas in mid-August, not just for this, but it was a trip with multiple purposes, shall I say. And I hadn't decided until I was on my way to Circa how many tickets I was going to buy. Because, by the way, you have to register in person. You have to physically be in Nevada to make the picks each week, or you have to have what's known as a proxy making them for you, which is allowed. But the picks have to be made when in Nevada physically, but you're allowed to be from out of state. However, the initial registration has to be done by you in person. You cannot have a proxy or a third party register for you. So everybody who plays this does have to come into Circa or one of their other Vegas satellite locations to register in order to play. There's no way around that. So I settled on 6 tickets. I thought that was a good compromise with myself, where I won't be as frustrated if I lose the whole thing as I would with 10K, but also is enough tickets to where I feel I'll have some flexibility. So that's what I went with, 6 tickets. But unlike last year, I had some issues with registration. And I'll tell you what the difference is. Last year, I was going downtown anyway. So when I was downtown, I just walked over to Circa and did the registration at the same time. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I was there in the early evening. I knew for sure the book would be open to do it. And I didn't have to worry about parking because I was parking there anyway, not at Circa, but I was parking in another lot for another reason that I was over there. So I didn't have to worry about some of these idiosyncrasies I ran into this year. Though I probably would have ran into them last year had I not already been there anyway for something else. So I was very busy with things to do on this last trip. I didn't have a lot of free time at all. And what I had planned to do, if possible, was to go over to Circa late at night and kind of squeeze in that registration. This way there's no traffic. This way everything else that I was going to be doing during the day and during the evening, this wouldn't get in the way of it, and it wouldn't get in the way of dinner. And it just seemed like the most convenient time to go there around midnight or so. Now, I didn't have to go at that time, but that's when it was most convenient. So, of course, I wanted to know, what hours does Circa take registration at their sportsbook? And it's a good question because not all sportsbooks are 24 hours. Some of them that are listed as 24 hours, like on Google, what they actually mean is that you can go use a kiosk to place bets 24 hours, but there's not a human being there. And you do need a human being there to register for this. I knew that for sure. So I did not know, and it wasn't easy to find out if they were going to have a human being there at, say, midnight who is capable of registering me for the Circa Survivor contest. So what did I do? Well, I called. I called Circa, and I asked them, can you tell me if the sportsbook has someone there who can register me for the contest? So I got an operator first who said that she's not sure. I said, well, can you transfer me over to the sportsbook? She says, no, there's no way to do that. I said, okay, well, can you get the information? She says, okay, hold on. And first she came back and said, yeah, I think it's closed. You can't do it this late. Then I said, are you sure? Well, no, I'm not sure. I said, well, can you check? So she went back and checked. Then she came back and said, no, they actually are. They're actually there 24 hours. And, the whole thing was not convincing. I was getting so many contradictory answers from her that I figured, you know what? I can't trust anything this one says to me. So I'm just going to politely say, okay, thank you, and call back a little bit later. So that's what I did. In fact, I went to dinner after those phone calls. So after dinner, I decided to call back. And I finished eating pretty late. It was a late dinner. So after dinner, I decided to call back. And if they said that they were open, I was going to come by very shortly after that and probably get there around 11-something p.m. So I called up, got a different operator, and I asked her the same question. Can I come down to register right now for the Circa Survivor contest? Is the sportsbook open with someone there who can do this? She said back, if you want information about the contest, let me give you an email address. Oh my God. And by the way, the hours were not on the webpage. The Survivor webpage said nothing about the hours you can register. So I said, no. I don't want an email address, because typically when you email a company, you either get no response or it takes days to respond. They're unlikely to be sitting there at midnight ready to respond to me. So I'm not going to email and sit and twiddle my thumbs all night to see if they're going to respond to me. So when you're calling a business and asking for their hours, they should just tell you their hours. They shouldn't say, oh, email us to find out the hours. That's a ridiculous answer. If you've reached them on the phone, they should just tell you their hours. So why did she tell me to email? Well, I assumed, she didn't say this to me, but I assumed the reason I was told to email was because there were probably people calling in who were asking specific questions about the Circa Survivor contest, and they don't want to educate all the operators on the intricacies of the contest because that's not their department. So someone calls and says, hey, I got a question about the contest, so I know I got to make a pick on Thanksgiving, but what is the cutoff? What time do I have to submit the Thanksgiving picks by? Is it 11 a.m.? Is it 9 a.m.? What time do I have to do the picks? I could see where the operator wouldn't know that. And the operator would say, well, any contest questions, here's the email address. That's a very reasonable response. But if I say, hey, are you open right now so I can come register? And the answer back is, well, email us and we'll tell you our hours. That's an absurd response. I've never had that in my life where I've called a business and I say, hey, is a certain department here open? And they say, well, email us and you'll find out. I've never had that in my life. Not with a casino, not with any business ever, when I've called and asked for their hours. I've had it before where I've called a business and asked for a certain department's hours, and I've gotten the incorrect answer. In fact, Caesars is notorious for that. But I've never had it before where I'm told to email them for their hours when they're probably sitting right there on property and telling me that they don't know their own hours. It's insane. So I said, look, I just want to know if the sports book is open right now and can take my registration. So can you maybe go down there and look, or call to some internal number that you can't transfer me to, but you can reach them, or go to somebody else who's in your department that can go down and check themselves or might know the answer to this. Can you do something? I mean, this is right there on your own property. And by the way, I wasn't getting an offshore representative. I know Caesars has outsourced a lot of their calls to the Philippines. In fact, if you call up the front desk from your room at a Caesars property, you're not going to get the front desk. You won't even get someone in Vegas. You will typically get someone in the Philippines who pretends they're at the front desk. But that's not the case with Circa. With Circa, I'm at minimum getting someone sitting in Las Vegas, and I think in all likelihood is actually in Circa itself. But whatever it is, they have the ability to reach people. So it was absurd that they could not tell me the hours of their own sportsbook. She kept trying to force the email address on me. I kept explaining that that's not what I want, that I just want to know their hours. Are they open right now, yes or no? So she put me on hold to look into it further, she said. And then she came back with a response of, okay, I found out it begins at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Oh my God. What? 2 p.m. tomorrow? First of all, I didn't ask when it begins. I asked, are you open now? Second, registration had been open for quite some time. This wasn't the first day. So what is this that begins at 2 p.m. tomorrow? Is she saying that every day you cannot show up there before 2 p.m.? That I wouldn't believe, because sportsbooks open early. So what's magical about 2 p.m.? Like, what kind of answer is that? It opens at 2 p.m. tomorrow. And I said, you're saying that's when it starts? Like the whole thing is starting? Like you couldn't register prior to 2 p.m. tomorrow? Ever? And she said, yes. So she was really trying to convince me that even though I know they've been taking registrations, that nobody's registered yet, and it starts at 2 p.m. the next day. For some reason, 2 p.m., even though the sports book's going to be open starting early in the morning. Somehow, 2 p.m. is the magic number when you can show up and start signing up for Circa Survivor, which I knew was not correct. So I said, that does not make any sense. But, okay, let's say hypothetically you're right. That's the opening time. But I'm not looking for tomorrow's opening time. In fact, it's going to be hard for me to come tomorrow. When is the closing time? And she said, yeah, I don't know that. They didn't tell me. They just told me it's going to be opening at 2 p.m. tomorrow for the first time. So hang on. I'm going to find out again. So she put me on hold, and she came back and she said, yeah. So anyway, you need to email them at blah, 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 blah. And I go, oh, my God, the email again. So I said, can you please stop telling me to email them? This doesn't make any sense. I'm asking, is there a human being at the sportsbook right now, and can that human being take Survivor registrations, yes or no? I don't need to know any rules of the contest. I don't need any details of the contest. I just want to know, are they open now? And she, again, kept putting me on hold. We went back and forth a few more times. And every time she came back with the same answer, yeah, you really need to email them. I seriously felt like slamming my head into the wall of the hotel room I was in, which was not downtown, by the way. And that, by the way, answers what might be another question in your head. Why didn't I just go down there and see for myself? And that's because downtown isn't close. And even at midnight, it's a pain in the ass to go from the Strip to downtown. And I'm not going to do that and make that long round trip just to find out it's not open. So I should be able to call the property and ask, are you open? I should not have to go down there myself all the way downtown and park and go in to see if they are open or not. That should not be a risk I have to take, especially when I can reach them on the phone. It's one thing if nobody's answering the phone. I get them on the phone, and I'm told I have to email or just go down. So I said, do you understand how absurd this is, that you're telling me I have to either email and wait days for a response maybe, or that I have to come all the way down to see for myself when you're probably right there in the same building and can walk a short distance, or ask somebody else to walk a short distance and find that out for me? Why should I have to come all the way downtown to see if you're open when I'm talking to you right now? I said, I should be able to call and get information from you about the hours of anything on your property. Why is this so difficult? So she put me on hold again. What do you think she said? Any ideas? Any guesses? She came back and said, I'm sorry, sir, but your only option is to email. Ah! I bet you're even frustrated hearing this. So I said, so what you're telling me is that my only options to find out the hours for your own sportsbook is to either email and wait maybe days for a response, or drive all the way down there and look for myself. Is it really impossible for someone on property who simply tell me if it's open or closed right now? Then she even realized how dumb this was, and she started stammering and stuttering. Well, email is what we're told to. You see, we're supposed to. It's just. Hold on again, please. And she put me on hold again. This time I was on hold a pretty long time, which I was actually happy about because I thought maybe I'll get a better answer. And she came back and told me that the sportsbook is indeed open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and is staffed by somebody the entire time, and that this person could take my registration for the Circa Survivor contest. Hallelujah! Now, I wasn't sure I could trust that answer, and in fact, I asked her, this contradicts everything else you've told me, so how can I be sure this is the right answer? It's the one I wanted to hear, but is it the correct one? And she said, yes, she's sure. She asked someone there who knows, I don't know why it took so long for her to find someone who knew. Like, who was she asking before? Who was giving her all these retarded answers about 2 p.m. and about emailing? Like, who just kept telling her this? I could only imagine the conversation that was taking place. She goes back and says, yeah, this guy wants to know the hours of the sports book, and can he come down and register for the Circa Survivor? Tell him to email. Yeah, sorry, sir, you got to email. No, I don't want to email. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, hold on. Yeah, he doesn't want to email. He says it's going to take a long time to get a response. He just wants to know right now if it's open. And so, what's the answer? Starting 2 p.m. tomorrow is when they take the registrations. Like, it's so weird. So I decided to trust it. And I got in my car and I started driving downtown to go to Circa. But as I was driving, I thought, wait a minute, we got one other small issue here. What is the parking situation? Because downtown, and I have no idea why they do this. I don't know why they do this, because downtown is a has-been. Downtown is trying to chase past glory. Downtown was once the place to go in Vegas and is not anymore. The Strip has passed them and gotten way past them, and now that's the place that is considered the main part of Vegas. My own son, who of course isn't aware very much of Vegas history and only knows what he's seen in his relatively short lifetime so far, asked me, why is downtown called downtown? Shouldn't the Strip be called downtown? That looks like a downtown to me. And he's right. The Strip has all the tall buildings. It looks like a downtown. The actual downtown looks like kind of like a side run-down area with some semi-tall buildings, but it looks like just an off area of Vegas, and the real downtown to be the place that has the concentration of all the really tall buildings, the main location of the city. So it's just because of the way Vegas evolved. I think if the Strip had its prominence many decades ago, that would be called downtown. And that's pretty much what I explained to him. But downtown has a stupid thing they're doing, and that is they don't offer free parking anymore. And in fact, they did this before the Strip property started charging for parking. So they had always sort of charged for parking downtown, but there were easy ways around it. You could get your tickets validated super easily, especially at Binion's. You could just stroll into Binion's and actually validate it yourself. There was a validating machine that you could just walk up to. Didn't require any play or any patronizing of the business. So it was an open secret that you could park for free downtown. And that was good for downtown because that brought bodies in. And when you're there, you typically will spend some money. Maybe you'll get some food. Maybe you'll gamble a little bit. Maybe you'll do one of the activities there. The point is you're there. They should want bodies down there. They should want people coming there without feeling like, oh, I don't want to pay for parking. And you may say, well, the Strip does that too. Well, yes, but the Strip does a lot better than downtown. The Strip has taken downtown's business. So this is a case, again, of when you're number two, you try harder. And since downtown is now number two, why don't they make it free to park there? I don't understand that. But that's the way it is. So I thought, well, shit, where do I park now? I have cards at MGM properties and Caesars properties and other properties in Vegas to park for free, but none of that works downtown. They don't have a presence downtown. So I really don't have a single place I can park downtown that I know of that's free. And I had heard something about free lots existing, but then I Googled it as I was driving, which is very hard to do and drive safely, and I wasn't really seeing it. So I said, you know what? Why don't I just live dangerously here and call Circa? Didn't work out great before, but maybe I'll get a correct answer this time. So I called Circa on the way there, and I asked a different operator this time, is there some sort of grace period with the parking here? If I park here and spend less than an hour in Circa and leave the lot in under 60 minutes, will I be able to exit for free? Because I did Google it, and it wasn't clear if there was a grace period. The parking lot there is actually called, and you're going to laugh at this, it's called Garage Mahal. You know, like Taj Mahal? This is the Garage Mahal. It's like a very pretentious thing to call it. It's an arrogant way to present their garage. I mean, it's just a damn garage. They're trying to say this is a nicer garage and security, make sure nothing happens to your car, and this is different than the other downtown garages. It's the Garage Mahal, but it's just obnoxious to call it that. And the website did say it starts charging immediately. It says, 0 to whatever minutes, $20. But that's not always true. There's usually some kind of grace period. For example, at Caesars, which is known to be very frugal and nickel and dimey, even they will give you an hour for free. So I'm thinking, well, does the Garage Mahal do that too? So that's what I asked. And if they said no, then maybe I would have looked to see if I could park at another property downtown and walk over there. And you may say, come on, Druff, you're going to be buying $6,000 worth of entries. You don't want to spend $20 for parking? And my answer is yes. Why? Because the $6,000, that's not money I'm throwing down a rat hole. At least hopefully it's not. It's to gamble with. That's totally separate from paying $20 to park for a few minutes to register in that casino's contest. So just in principle, I didn't want to do it. So if they said the Garage Mahal has no grace period, or it's one that's so short there's no way I can register and get back to my car, then I would have looked more closely at the other properties and see if I could park at those properties for less than an hour and not pay. I wasn't going to totally knock myself out. Like, I'm not going to park a mile away to save $20, but if it's something that's reasonable, I would have done it. Anyway, she said that there's a grace period of, quote, something like 25 minutes. Now, I didn't like the something like part, but she said it's something like that. 25 minutes, 30 minutes, something like that. So I figured that was doable. Figured I could park, walk in quickly, register, walk briskly back to my car, and get out in less than half an hour. Probably less than 25 minutes. So I parked there. Walked over to the sportsbook. I knew where it was. I didn't have to search for it. I knew my way around enough to do that from my previous visits there. Got there, registered, and before departing, I asked 2 different people who were working the sportsbook if they validated parking. Because I thought maybe that's the way around it. They said, well, we don't validate parking. Sorry. I said, okay, well, fine. But is there a grace period? Well, one of the employees said he thought it was 30 minutes. The other guy said he thought it was 60 minutes. Both of them said they weren't 100% sure, but they said, yeah, it's something like 30, 60, something along those lines. So I thought, okay, fine. I have plenty of time then, because I'm done. It doesn't take me that long to walk back to my car, and I will get out of this lot well before the 30-minute mark. Well, indeed, when I pulled up and inserted my ticket, it had only been 22 minutes since I got that ticket. How much money did it ask me for?
0.0.
No, I wish that were the answer. It actually asked for
$1 million.
Well, no, but it felt like that. It asked me for $20. And I said, oh, it charged me $20, even though it's only been 22 minutes. What happened to something like 25 minutes, like the operator told me? What happened to the guys in the sportsbook saying 30 or 60? It's been 22, and it asked me for $20. You may say, come on, Druff, you parked there, you spent $6,000 on the contest, just pay the damn 20 and leave. No, I'm not doing it. I just don't want to do it. If they told me that the grace period is something that's just too short for me to be able to do it and get out of there, and I choose to park there anyway, then yes, I'll pay the $20 because it was my choice to do. But here I listened to what was told to me by 3 employees, and according to all 3 of them, I had been there less time than that. So no, if their employees are going to all get this wrong, they've got to honor it. So I pressed the call button on the parking machine, and a security guard answered. And she told me there's, quote, never free parking, that there's actually a 0-minute grace period, and that it's $20 the instant you enter. She said, you have to pay, there's no way around it. I said, can you make an exception? And I explained the whole story. She said that she would send someone down to help. And I said, well, wait a minute, can't you just... Nope, no answer. She just hung up. So I sat and waited. Took a little time for the guy to get there, but he got down there. And I explained the things to him. And he said, well, they're all wrong. They should not have told you the grace period is 25, 30, or 60 minutes, nor should the security guard you spoke to have told you that the grace period is 0 minutes, because none of those are right. The actual grace period is 15 minutes. So I missed it by 7. So I said, well, because everybody got this wrong and it's only been 22 minutes, can you please just let me out? And he said, yeah, I'll make a one-time exception and I'll let you out for free. So I appreciated that. He didn't have to. He could have dug his heels in and been a dick about it, but he listened and he understood I was told the wrong thing and everybody had the wrong info, and he made the common sense, correct decision to let me out for free. So I got out free. But I thought about it. Why is Circa so stingy with their parking? Even Caesars, which is famous for their nickel and diming, gives you an hour for free. Most places around Vegas that charge for parking give you some kind of grace period better than 15 minutes. So why is Circa so obsessed with hitting people for $20 if they come in for just a little bit over 15 minutes? Like, why? I guess they get $20 out of them, but this couldn't leave a good taste in anyone's mouth. And they're supposed to be like the classy place in downtown Vegas. It's a new ground-up property that is supposed to be higher end. It's supposed to be one that treats the customers with respect, that isn't sleazy, that isn't tacky. And you know what? They've succeeded at that. I'll give it to them that the property looks nice, that for the most part, the employees are nice to you. You don't feel like you're downtown when you're in Circa. I have respect for the place. But what's with nobody knowing anything there when you call? And what's with this whole parking thing? Why are they so obsessed with this lot? It's the Garage Mahal, and we only give you 15 minutes to get out, and nobody knows that, but that's our secret grace period, and if you violate it, $20 from you. Why are they so obsessed with that? And if that's really the policy, make it clear on the sign. Say 0 to 14 minutes free, 15 minutes to whatever minutes, $20, and then I think it's 22 from there after 2 hours, and then 25. I forgot what the maximum is per day, but just put the truth up there. Don't have us guessing. Don't put 0 to whatever number of minutes is $20 when that's not true. And then your employees have to guess at what the grace period is. So this whole thing was frustrating. Even though I ultimately ended up okay, if you think about it. I did end up registering for the contest, and I did end up leaving the parking lot for free. So what's my issue? My issue is that the operators have no clue there. So when you call up, you can neither find out simple information, nor can you be transferred to anybody who is more competent at knowing the correct information. So you can call, but you just get wrong answers. You don't even get the courtesy of, sorry, we just don't know and we have no way to find out. I appreciate that honesty more than just taking guesses. But instead, they just come to you with an answer, which isn't right. They really need to improve that. My suggestions to Circa would be, number one, make it 100% clear on the Circa Survivor website that participants can register 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Number two, educate all operators about that. And number three, change the parking lot to give an hour grace period before charges accrue. And if they don't want to do that, then at least validate people's parking for an hour when they come to register for the Circa Survivor contest. Now, I will concede something. There's no rake in this contest. They don't make any money out of it. They get good publicity, but they make no money. In fact, they lose money because they have to administrate it, and yet they make no profit. Every dollar that is spent on this contest in buy-ins goes back to the players. So you may say, Druff, you're being an ingrate here. You're playing a zero rake contest and you expect them to give you barking? How can you expect that? You should be happy you're playing for no rake. How dare you ask for more? How dare you bite the hand that is feeding you a contest with zero rake and zero EV for an average player?
How dare you?
And on the surface, that would make sense to say to me. But Circa already does give you something for registering. If you register 1 to 9 tickets, anywhere between 1 and 9, they will give you 50% off a 2-night stay at the hotel. And if you get 10 tickets, which again, they're not making any profit on, they will give you a complimentary 2-night stay at the hotel. So here they're giving you these hotel discounts, even in the case of 10 tickets, a hotel comp, but they won't give you an hour of parking? Why not? It's their lot. They don't have to reimburse anybody. It was just a weird obsession they have with that garage where they just don't want to do it. Now, I did a write-up about this on Vegas Casino Talk, and then I tweeted a link to it. And boy, I got an earful, or shall I say a tweetful, from the sports betting community who really came down hard on me. Most of these people did not know me because they're sports bettors and not poker players. I'm not really known in the sports community unless they have a crossover to the poker or casino gambling community. But if it's just the sports betting people, I'm not really very well known. So to most of them, I was a stranger. There was no situation there where people were answering negatively because they already didn't like me. But here is a selection of responses that I got. And I'm just paraphrasing here, but this is basically what they were saying. One of them asking, wait, so you ended up being able to register when you wanted and park for free? What's your problem? Another one saying, well, you Googled it and it said the sportsbook was open 24/7, and that ended up being right. The sign in the parking lot said that starting from 0 hours, it's $20, and that turned out to be right. Why are you whining? Everything you read was correct. Another one said, you were told to email for the hours. Why didn't you just do that? Why do you think you're too good for email? Why don't you just follow their instructions? Another one said, what, all this bitching over $20? What's your problem here? What's wrong with you? Another one said, why didn't you just come down during the day when you know they'll be open? Why do you have to come down at midnight? Why are you being so petty? Just come down when you know it's going to work. Stop trying to make them answer these questions. So this is all bullshit. This is all blame the customer bullshit. Some of these responses actually sound like, oh, these guys kind of have a point until you really think about it. And once you think about it, these arguments all fall apart. It doesn't matter what Google says. Google's wrong a lot. It doesn't matter what the sign in the parking lot says. In fact, the sign was wrong. It's not after 0 minutes you get charged. You get charged after 15. So it's just very simple. When you call Circa, when you call any other casino, when you call any other business, if you reach someone, they should always, 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 always be able to tell you the correct hours for all departments, especially if the person answering the phone is on property. There should never be, we don't know our own hours. Never. Hours should be simple. They should be listed somewhere. And I don't just mean Circa. Every casino, every business should know their own hours. Caesars has this issue too. They give you a lot of wrong answers about hours of restaurants and things. It drives me up the wall. Why these casinos don't know their own hours is mind-boggling. And there's no excuse. You can't just say, well, that's the way it is now. It shouldn't be this way. It's very easy to fix. So that's not something that should be acceptable. And number two, along the same lines, properties that have highly restrictive policies should educate employees on these exact policies. So about the parking, if there really is a hardline 15-minute grace period, which of course is very short, then they should just post it on the sign and be honest. They should just post on the sign, 0 to 14 minutes is free. Anything beyond that costs $20 minimum. Then when I pull up, if I see that, then I know. And then if I choose to pull in and take more than 15 minutes, well, then it's my problem. And then I have to pay. And if I don't like it, then I could always just turn around and not park in that lot. But to hide what the grace period is and hide it from their own employees, and then have this situation come up when the employees try to guess and think they know, then you have these issues. So it should never be a secret what the grace period is for the parking. It should never be a secret what the hours are for any departments. This should be known by all customer-facing employees, all commonly customer-facing employees. I don't mean like the janitor should know, but the operator answering the phone who can't transfer you to anybody, they need to know the hours of the stuff on properties and the parking policies. Even the security guard who answers the help button on the parking machine did not know the parking policy. So that's a big problem. and there's no excuse for it, and you don't blame me as the customer. It's not my problem that they don't know this. It's not my problem when I call from information about their own property, I can't get it. That they take guesses because they don't know. That's their problem. It's not on me to come different hours because they can't tell me their hours. I shouldn't have to say, well, you don't know your own hours, so I guess I'll just come at 2 p.m. tomorrow when I know it'll be a time that you can take my entry. I shouldn't have to do that as a customer. I should be able to find out their hours and then act accordingly. So let's say I called up and they said, hey, we're not open at midnight. You can't register at midnight. That ends at 10 p.m. I would have said, okay. I wouldn't have said, hey, assholes, why aren't you open for me? Because I don't set their hours. They set their hours. So just tell me what they are, and I will adjust my schedule accordingly. But don't tell me you don't know your own hours. That's absurd. So here's the bottom line. You need to always get the right info when you call any business and ask them about their hours or any other basic element of their business. And if the people you're calling don't have that info, then it's the fault of the managers of that company for not providing it to their customer-facing employees. And there's no way around that. No way around it. So it is not my fault that I'd like to come at midnight if they're open and I can't find out they're open. That's not my fault. That's their fault. It's not my fault that I can't get a straight answer about their parking policy, and then I end up getting charged $20, which they told me I wouldn't be. But there's a lot of customer blaming going on. That's because this has occurred as a result of social media. Social media has created a culture where unhappy customers are seen as always being in the wrong, except in the most egregious situations. A lot of idiots on X and Facebook and other platforms wear their willingness to deal with poor service as a badge of honor. There's people there who are bragging that if they were in my shoes, they would have just adjusted their own schedule and come down in the middle of the afternoon. And I said, well, what if it's not convenient? Well, I would have done it because I couldn't get the info out of them. And well, will you at least agree that they should have had the info? No, I won't agree. Sometimes they just don't have that. You've got to adjust. I go, no, I've got to adjust if their hours just are not hours I would like. I shouldn't have to adjust because they don't know their own hours, but they weren't getting it. It's the whole thing that kind of developed on social media that talk about Karens, about women that are difficult and always ask for the manager and always create a hassle at these businesses and always argue. So it's seen that anyone who criticizes a business and the way they are providing customer service is a Karen, whether you're male or female. But that's wrong. There's a certain expectation every customer should have of businesses, and one of them is knowing their own hours, knowing their own parking policies. So I will not even entertain that I was even slightly in the wrong here, except one thing. I did make one mistake here. My mistake was there was something mentioned on the website that there are satellite locations that you can also register at that are not on the downtown area. These are locations that are more convenient if you are staying on the Strip, like the Tuscany is one. So I just missed that. It wasn't like prominently displayed, but I missed it. And that was my fault. I just somehow skimmed past that and didn't know there was anywhere else I could register besides Circa. So next year, I will just register at one of these satellite locations and avoid the whole downtown bullshit. So I've already got a solution for next year. But aside from that, I didn't do anything wrong. I always try to know the rules at any business and then follow the rules. But if they can't tell me the rules or they tell me the wrong rules and then it ends up costing me time or money, then that's their problem, not mine. Okay, rant over. I don't hate Circa or anything. I mostly respect them. This is just something they're not doing well. And someone even asked me, oh, what are you going to do now? Take your business elsewhere? I said, no, I'm not saying anything like that. I'm going to keep playing the Survivor contest, and I may even come back down to Circa to gamble or stay or do something else. I'm not a big downtown person, but I'm not against Circa. I'm just saying that this is an area they can improve, and I'm hoping by reading my report of the situation, they think about this and say, you know what, maybe he's got some points here. Let's talk about DraftKings. They've done something disturbing here. It's not really getting much discussion, but this is pretty bad. they posted new rules regarding sports bets on their site. And they're talking about types of bets they can void. That is, you've placed the bet, they've accepted the bet, but after the fact, they can kill the bet and just refund your money. So they mentioned a bunch of obvious situations where they can void it, such as past posting. Past posting is where, after the game has already started, you bet on it as if it has not started yet. Or sometimes if the game is over already. I'm not talking about live betting. That's a whole different thing. I'm saying that, let's say they're unaware the game has started and it still has the pregame line, and you're betting on it, and it turns out the game has either started or is mostly finished, or maybe even is completely finished. That's past posting. So if you're clearly past posting, like here, I'll give you a simple example. Let's say you bet on the Dodgers at minus 130, which is fairly close to even money. It's still a favorite line. You're not going to get even money. You bet 13 to win 10, basically. But let's say you bet it minus 130, and that's the pregame line. But when you bet it, it's actually the 8th inning, and the Dodgers are up 10-0. Well, it's almost certain they're going to win. It's super, super, super unusual for a team to blow a 10-0 lead in the 8th inning. So you wouldn't be getting minus 130 on that. You get something like minus 100,000. So if you bet minus 130 in the 8th inning when they're up 10-0, and they just hadn't updated the line or taken the line off the board because the game had started, that's considered past posting, and they can void your bet. So that's obvious. There's no problem with that. The problem is this new rule, this rule number 7 in that category, Roman numeral 7. It says, any bets accepted by DraftKings at the time of or after an announcement has been made or information has been released where A, the announcement or information affects the odds of the bet, and B, the odds for the bet had not yet been updated on the DraftKings platform to reflect the announcement or information. For example only, if an announcement is made that the starting running back of a football game is not going to play in the game, any bets on the backup running back accepted after such an announcement was made, but before the odds on such backup running back has been made to updated on the DraftKings platform to reflect the announcement is an error. Now, this is kind of weirdly worded, but it's pretty simple. They're saying that anytime something changes, a condition of the game changes, such as a major player isn't playing and his backup is playing, anytime something changes that would significantly change what the betting line would have been, if they have not yet updated the line to reflect that and you get in the bet before that, then they can void your bet and make it as if you never bet in the first place. Now, that is really bad, and there's a lot of ways they can abuse it too. It's way too broad, and it's also unfair. The burden is on them as a sportsbook to keep up with any kind of information that would change the odds of the game. That's just part of being a sportsbook. That's always part of being a sportsbook. They're changing the rules, the basic rules of sports betting, by doing this. So they're saying if it's announced that a certain major player, like a quarterback or running back, is not playing, and you get the bet in after the announcement but before they have changed the line, that they can say, nope, this is the old line that we should have changed, but we weren't fast enough at changing, so no, we're voiding your bet. There's a lot of reasons that's crappy. First of all, that's totally not industry standard and never has been. Number 2, this actually can work both ways. You could bet on the other side, not knowing that news, and get a bad line. So it's always the responsibility of both the bettor and the house to know about any recent changes before making a bet. And you know what? I've made this mistake before too. I've made the mistake on the other side where a major player on the team that I'm betting on is scratched at the last minute and the announcement is made and I haven't seen it and I bet and the line hasn't changed where I'm betting, so they haven't seen it yet either. And then I find out that, yes, that was announced like 10 minutes before I placed my bet and just they hadn't reacted, I hadn't reacted, and it turns out the line I'm getting should have been much better. But okay, I don't get mad at them. It is up to me to try to get this information before I place my bets. And it's up to them to try to get this information before they accept my bets. It's a two-way street. But the bigger problem is that this is so broad, they could make anything apply to this. Because they don't say, well, only if it's a quarterback or running back or one of the starting five in the NBA who, say, has more than such and such points average per game. Like, they're not listing out the exact situations where this is going to occur, which still is wrong. They're just saying, in their opinion, if they would have changed the line based on this information, and the information's already come out and they just haven't changed it yet, that they're going to cancel your bet if they feel like it. So basically they're saying if you got a line they don't like anymore, they can probably find a way to cancel it under this rule. I'm not saying they will cancel it every time that you get a line they don't like, but I'm saying they can. It is now in their rules giving them a right to make this subjective decision that some announcement would be impacting their line, and therefore they're canceling your bet. So it could be a very minor announcement. It could be that some minor player that doesn't really impact the line of the game is going to be sitting. Or maybe it impacted a tiny bit. They shouldn't cancel your bet over that, but they can. So if the line changes for another reason, maybe because the action is one way or the other, then they can use that as an excuse to void the bets of the ones they really don't want to have taken. And the thing is, you can't do this to them. You can't say, oh, whoa, hold on. When I placed this bet on the Lakers, I didn't know LeBron James wasn't playing. I guess it had been announced, but I didn't see it. And then I placed the bet anyway, and I wouldn't have done that. Can you take the bet back? Can you void it? No, they won't do that for you. So you can't choose to have the bet voided. So why can they? That's a complete joke. A lot of the problem here is that these legalized sports books, a lot of them are new to the game. A lot of them were not originally sports books. DraftKings, for example, was a daily fantasy sports site. And Barstool Sports, what were they? They were just a media company. So a lot of them don't really understand the customs and industry standards, the long-time industry standards of the sports betting community. And they're just kind of making up their new rules and screwing people. They're also giving you crappy odds instead of it being a 10-cent line, minus 110 on both sides in a spread game. A lot of times it's worse than that. The house juice is 15, 20%. And they have a lot of customer hostile policies. And they ban or reduce people very quickly who seem to know what they're doing. I'm not even talking about the sports bettors who crush. I'm saying that anyone who kind of looks like they know what they're doing suddenly finds their limits much, much lower. And these non-Nevada states are not used to regulating sports betting. So they don't even know what they're doing either. The regulators don't really understand what they should be regulating and the rules they should be enforcing. Like, there's no way a regulator should allow this. A regulator should look at this and say, no. This is not how sports betting works. No, there's too many ways you guys can game this. We're not letting it happen. This is way too broad. We're not letting it happen. That's what a good sports betting or gambling commission would say. But the problem is they're not good. These other states don't know what they're doing with regulating gambling, and that's why you get a lot of these nonsensical rulings or non-rulings. So that whole thing really sucks. I don't know how often they're going to implement it, but what they're basically doing is covering their ass in case there's a lot of sharp action for big money on a line that is kind of stale because a major condition of the game has changed and they just weren't fast enough to change it. But as I said, the knife cuts both ways, and this has always been a two-way responsibility for the gambler and for the book. This is very different than the erroneously posted line, where that's very understandable that they could void it. So if they want to offer a plus 110 bet, which is very close to even money, and they accidentally offer plus 11,000 by fat fingering in 2 zeros at the end, they should not be expected to offer that bet at plus 11,000, which is 110 times your money. You should not be able to get 110 times your money for winning something that's almost an even money bet. So if that happens, then any person with a slightly functioning brain would know this was mistakenly posted, and it makes sense to void it. Because if you don't, then the sports books will all go under when people hammer one of those erroneous lines that's off by an order of magnitude, and then they'll go under. So there has to be some protection there so they can't be taken advantage of by glitches or mistyping. But that's not what's going on here. This is just they're not happy you have a good line because you heard some information before they did. And we're not talking about you finding out something as an insider. We're talking about the average Joe who can just follow sports news and happens to hear it before they do. It's part of the game. So DraftKings has been very crappy for the sports betting world. And the whole way sports betting is being handled in the legalized and regulated space has been very unimpressive, as has the regulation. Now, I will say, one of the things I do wish I had, it's going to sound strange, is access to legalized and regulated books in California. Because I don't. Nobody in California does. And it sucks because sometimes it's hard to find certain prop action on the offshore books. And then I would have had access to such prop action if I had those legalized and regulated books, but I can't use them here. I'll give you an example. Cade Horton is a rookie pitcher for the Cubs. And he started off kind of mediocre. The first half of his season wasn't so hot. He wasn't promoted right away at the beginning of the year, but when he was promoted, he was kind of uneven. But then in the second half, he really got going and was pitching a lot of shutout games. He wasn't going the whole game, but he'd go 5 or 6 shutout innings over and over. He was starting to look better and better. I noticed that in the National League, which the Cubs are in, of course, that there was no runaway candidate for Rookie of the Year. There's just not one rookie who's absolutely crushing it in 2025 in the National League. So I'm thinking, well, what are the odds of Cade Horton winning the National League Rookie of the Year? Because he's now having a good year overall, and he seems to be getting better and better. And I really can't think of anyone who's dominating that's a rookie right now in the National League, so he's got to be up there, right? Well, I look, some books are not even showing him as a selection because they don't even think he has any chance. And I find other books have him at pretty long odds. But the problem is most of them I can't use. So the only one I could use was Bovada, but they've limited me a long time ago, and I could place a whopping $35 on Cade Horton winning Rookie of the Year. Now, why did I place it? Why did I bother? Well, because the odds were actually 35 to 1 that he'd be Rookie of the Year. And it wasn't because Bovada was asleep at the switch. Any place that was offering Cade Horton was giving odds like that. Just no one saw it somehow. I don't understand it, because I saw it. I was like, okay, the guy's doing well. He's getting better and better. And there is no rookie that's really a clear favorite this year. So why is he 35 to 1? And I saw others that were like 12 to 1, 15 to 1, who had absolutely no chance. So why was Cade Horton 35 to 1? They were just overlooking him. I think because he didn't have the best start. So the only place I could play that bet was Bovada at a maximum of $35. So I did $35 at 35 to 1 to win $1,225. So fast forward a few weeks, guess what? Cade Horton is now not only the shortest odds, he's not only the top selection right now, most likely to win Rookie of the Year, he's actually now the favorite to win the Rookie of the Year. Last I looked, earlier today, he is now minus 115 to win Rookie of the Year, which means it is now believed that Cade Horton has a higher chance to win Rookie of the Year in the National League than all other candidates combined. And I got him at 35 to 1. I wanted to place $1,000 on it. That's what I wanted to do. 1,000 to win 35,000. Instead, I got $35 to win 1,225. So there, I wish I had a DraftKings, which I believe is taking that bet. I would have loved to have placed that bet. Now, maybe they would have tried to find some way to cancel it, but I wish I had a way to place that bet. What I should have done is called people who had access and let them do it and give them a small piece if it wins. Of course, I have to trust those people, that they don't just run off with the money because it'd be their account, but that's what I should have done. But I didn't. You don't have many opportunities come like that, too. I tried to post about it on Poker Fraud Alert, too, and I don't know how many people did it. I hope some other people did it, because it was a great bet. There's no question that he was way more likely than 35-1 to win the National League Rookie of the Year at that point. I saw the writing on the wall. It was obvious to me. Not obvious he'd win it, but obvious he'd be one of the finalists to win it. It shouldn't be 35-1. So let's talk about All-American Dave. All-American Dave, if you remember, was a guy who operated a food truck at the Rio during the World Series of Poker. And during the time he was operating at the World Series of Poker, things were great. People liked his food. He was making a lot of money. His truck was parked in this back area of the Rio World Series area by the outdoor bathrooms. And people just learned to go there or learned to order through his runners that would bring the food over to your table. It was expensive, but it was fairly healthy. And I guess it tasted pretty good. It wasn't really my type of food, so I didn't order it. But people seemed very satisfied with it to the point that they were getting All-American Dave subscriptions where for some discount you could buy a meal plan where you'd get a lot of meals during each World Series and they would just subtract from your balance. He was doing really well. I don't even think he operated the food truck outside of the 7 weeks of the World Series, but he would make so much money during those 7 weeks that he could basically take the rest of the year off and live a pretty extravagant lifestyle. Not like a super extravagant lifestyle, but he was definitely doing well and didn't have to work that long. 7 weeks out of the year, it looked like to me. So everybody thought positively of the guy. He gave good customer service. He was very engaged with the business. He would be there himself a lot of the time. And you really didn't hear very much said about him that was negative other than the food is too expensive and some people said the food is bland. But again, for the most part, people were very happy with the service he brought there. And for those that didn't like it, they just didn't have to order. It's not like they had complaints that he was not giving them what they paid for or that he was scamming anybody. So it was a successful run there on both ends, on the end of the players and for Dave himself. But then the World Series of Poker ended at the Rio and moved to the Paris and Bally's location, which is now Paris and Horseshoe. And Caesars decided, hey, we don't want him anymore. Now, he was paying them something to operate from there, and they tolerated it because the Rio had limited food options, and it especially had limited food options if you didn't want to eat junk. So the Rio, in order to ease the crowds that would flow into their relatively few restaurants during the breaks at the World Series of Poker, they were okay with Dave being there to take off some of that burden. But once it moved to Center Strip, where Paris and Bally's were, there were a lot more food options, and they didn't want Dave there anymore because he was taking away business that they could have at their food outlets. So they let him know that. They said to Dave, sorry, we're not renewing you. You can't come back. You can't come to Paris and Bally's. In fact, you're completely banned. So you cannot, I don't know if he's banned personally, but his business was banned. So not only could he not operate from there, but he couldn't operate through there either. They're saying that he can't even take orders and deliver to people playing at Paris and Horseshoe. That just, he absolutely had to keep his business away from there. So at the time he presented this to the public, there was a lot of sympathy for him, and even Phil Hellmuth tweeted out that he'd like to find a way to keep All-American Dave at the World Series and bring him to this new location. This ended up not happening. So then it raised the question, well, okay, people had balances that they let run from year to year, and they didn't worry about it because he was back every year and they trusted him. What happens to the balances now? He's holding people's money, so isn't it time to refund that money? Well, it turned out the answer was no. He did not refund the money, and it turned out that he spent all the money. Now, he blamed this on Caesars for pulling the rug out from him. He also blamed COVID. But it turned out that a lot of his blaming of others wasn't all that accurate. Now, it is true that if he could continue operating at Paris and the Horseshoe, then there wouldn't have been a problem. But that's much in the way you could say that if Full Tilt hadn't been busted on Black Friday, that they would have had the money to pay the players. The point is that Full Tilt stole the money they had on deposit for the players, so when Black Friday happened, they couldn't pay anybody, and All-American Dave did the same thing. He stole the money that was on deposit for his customers. Now, I know it's not quite the same thing, because Dave could argue, look, I'm using that money to buy supplies for the following year. I didn't know I couldn't operate. But the problem was, this wasn't just about operations. He had a place that he either owned or was renting in Fiji, and he kept it far longer than the time that he was told that he couldn't operate anymore at the World Series. So it looked like he didn't really dial down his lifestyle very much when this bad news was dropped. And the bottom line is, when you are holding money for customers who are trusting you, because these customers could have come to him at the end of the year and said, hey, give me back my balance. But they're like, no, he's been good to the community. He's been respectable. We're just going to trust he's not going to screw us. So they trusted him, and then it turned out he took the money that was on deposit, spent it, and then he had nothing to give the players. Nor was he really giving any kind of hard promise about effort he was going to make to pay. He was stating that he would eventually try to pay people. He wasn't saying, haha, I'm taking your money. But he wasn't giving any kind of plan as to, if X occurs, then I'll give you your money. It was like, okay, well, if I get back on my feet and make things work again, then I'll pay people, was kind of the message from him. Very ambiguous, and people weren't liking it. He also seemed to be not taking responsibility for everything that happened. He also blamed COVID for some of the downturn, but then it was found, actually by me, that he got a $243,000 PPP loan during COVID that he didn't have to pay back and didn't pay back. So he got $243K for doing nothing, and he really didn't have many employees. They had some girls that were running the stuff over to poker players. I don't even know if he paid any of them during COVID. He probably didn't. And maybe one or two people helping cook the food, but I have a feeling the vast majority of that $243K he just pocketed. And then even if he didn't, what about all the money he had on deposit? This is player money. This should not have been money that he was spending, especially if he has a place in Fiji and other extravagant stuff like that when he's running into financial problems. So a lot of people had a problem with it, including me. At one point, he messaged me. This is back in 2022. At one point, he messaged me and tried to explain everything. And I was polite to him. And I'm like, look, you were well-liked before this. I liked you before this, and I didn't even use your service. But this is wrong. You got to make more of an effort to pay people back. You have to be more apologetic that you took their money and now you don't have it anymore. People could have taken back that money at the end of every World Series, and they didn't because they trusted you, and you violated that trust. That's the bottom line. And I said it politely, but that's what I was saying to him, and he just wasn't getting it. On April 15th, 2022, he tweeted, I cannot and will not continue to endure this toxic environment in regards to my failed food truck business. I'll be checking out a Twitter for a while. And then he gave his email address for questions and concern. Thanks to all of you who showed love. So that seemed to be that in April 2022. So why are we discussing this now 3.5 years later? Well, I gave you an update a little while back about something else that he posted. He had posted about the All-American Dave comeback in September of 2024, about a year ago. He tweeted with a link to a YouTube video, the AAD, meaning All-American Dave comeback. My passion for this concept never died, but a piece of me did when it all fell apart at the World Series of Poker. I believe I can rebuild and still make it right for those with lost gift card credits, but it takes action, and that's what this series is about. So he started a YouTube series called the AAD Comeback that was supposed to be about how he's not going to just talk about coming back. He's going to take action and make everything right. Now, those are nice words, and I said at the time, I hope this happens. But, people will say this type of stuff all the time and then not really do it. So that was a year ago, and he talked about this comeback. Well, the comeback didn't last very long. He last posted on the channel, looks like 9 months ago, and one of these videos is called Finally Back to Fiji Living, a look at what's to come. I mean, this is what I mean. Like, why are you even going to Fiji? He also had some weird weight loss bet with Dan Bilzerian, of all people. Like, why is he making weight loss bets? It just doesn't make any sense. If he feels so bad about owing money to the players who trusted him, then where's the money for Fiji coming from? Where's the money for the weight loss bet coming from? So he talked about this comeback, but it seemed like the comeback was more about losing weight and entering physique contests. I'm not even kidding. He's entering these physique contests because he lost weight and built some muscle. And I don't know. The whole channel was so weird, and it didn't really seem to be focusing on paying people back. But I talked about that at the time and kind of forgot about it. But we have an update. That's why we're doing this segment here. We have an All-American Dave update, and one I have to admit I didn't expect. This is a tweet that he made on August 25th, 2025. We are back. All-American Dave's is reopening. Wait a minute. Does that mean poker players can finally use their food credits again, albeit years later? Is he coming back to the World Series or somewhere in Vegas that's easy for them to access? We are back in Mammoth Lakes, California? Yes. All-American Dave's is reopening in Mammoth Lakes, California, it says. If you had a leftover 2021 meal plan balance, it's valid again. It's not a perfect fix, but no comeback ever happened without a setback. One day at a time, one meal at a time, the comeback starts now. When the food truck closed, I felt like my life was falling apart. My dad died during the main event, and 6 months later, I lost the business I built over 10 years, and I lost the respect of people who believed in me when I couldn't honor their meal plans. I was defeated. But last year, the All-American Dave comeback I did on YouTube reminded me of what's possible. When you eat better, train better, and do the little things right. That spark lit again, and I realized the only way to make things right is to start. So here we are, the truck is back, the mission is alive again. If you had a 2021 meal plan, it's active again here in Mammoth. It won't all be fixed overnight, but one meal at a time will make it right and hopefully build something even bigger. I don't know exactly where it goes from here, and honestly, I'm scared to death of failing, but I know if I don't try, I'll regret it forever. The dream was always bigger, and now it's time to get back to what I believe in. Eat better, be better. The comeback starts now. All right, so let's analyze this here. Now, this is clever, I'll give him that. We'll see how much utilization anyone gets from this. But let's think about this for a second. First of all, Mammoth Lakes is very isolated. If you're from California, you probably know where it is. If you're from Nevada, you probably know where it is. But if you're not, I'll tell you. Mammoth Lakes is a ski resort town which is located in the middle of nowhere in like central eastern California. It is far from everything. The closest metro area to Mammoth is, if you can call it a metro area, is Reno. And that's 170 slow miles away. It's not on super highways or anything. It's a slow 170 mile drive. And the second closest one is Sacramento, which is 235 miles away. So it really is far from everything. It's about 300 from Vegas and about 300 from Los Angeles, give or take. So Mammoth is a place that is mostly visited by Southern Californians to ski in the winter, and some people who like hiking and biking in the summer. But it's nothing that you're likely to pass through very often driving elsewhere. If you are driving from LA to Tahoe, then yes, you may go that direction where you pass through Mammoth. But there's a different way to go that would be going up I-5 where you wouldn't pass through Mammoth. And even if you are passing through Mammoth on the way from LA to Tahoe, there's no guarantee you'll be passing through when he is open. I don't even know what hours he's open, but it's not like he's open 24/7. So basically he's saying if you happen to be in Mammoth Lakes, presumably visiting to go ski or something, that you can just go find his truck and he'll honor your meal plan. But, if he owes someone $500, they're not going to be able to eat $500 worth of his food while they're visiting Mammoth. And then most people who have balances with him are never going to go to Mammoth at all, especially people who don't live in California or Nevada. So people from New York or New Jersey or Florida, they're not going to ever be in Mammoth. So they can never redeem this. I asked him in response to this tweet if people can transfer the balances to each other. So let's say you know a poker player who goes to Mammoth all the time. Could you transfer your balance to that person? And he didn't answer me. So that's the first problem, is he's in a very isolated place that most people are unlikely to go to be able to redeem this. And even if they do go, they have to go where his truck is to eat, which is not convenient. It's one thing with the truck parked right outside the World Series. It's another thing if it's just somewhere off in Mammoth. So what, like you're going to go leave the ski resort to go find his truck and come back? It's not convenient just to get a pre-boxed meal that otherwise would be like $25. So I hardly see anyone redeeming this. But why is he offering it at all? Well, I think there's two reasons. Number one, it's semi-good optics. It makes it look like he's trying to make good here. And this way, if people start to complain on social media, hey, he opened up and just took all our balances and just kept them, and now he's operating again and won't even honor them, that would look really bad. But that leads me to my second point. If he did not honor the balances, then he could be sued very successfully. See, if a business fails and just goes under, then it can be hard to sue the individual who's the head of the business, because in a lot of cases, they're seen as separate entities by the court. So it can be tough to sue the owner of the business if the business is registered separately. And this was registered as a business called Swanning Limited because his last name is Swanson. So Swanning Limited is presumably what went under and not Dave himself. So it's hard to sue Dave when your problem is with Swanning Limited, even though it's the same thing. So that's why a lot of people get away with having businesses that just shut down and owe people money, and it doesn't affect them personally. However, if that business reopens, then people's balances need to be good again. And if they're not, then they can claim they were defrauded. And at very least, they can sue him and probably win. Otherwise, every business could do this. When anyone buys credits or gift cards, they could just shut down for a little bit and then come right back and say, sorry, we're not honoring the previous. And there was no ownership change or anything. This was him. This is the exact same business, opening up with the exact same truck, exact same name, run by the exact same person. So he'd have a very hard time explaining in court why he is not accepting these credits that people bought with real money just because he shut down for a few years in between. Because it was his choice to shut down, not theirs. So he's going to come right back with it. What they bought should still be good. And he can't claim it expired or anything because they had no chance to redeem it. So this also could be a way to legally protect himself while knowing that very few are actually going to redeem it. I think those are the main two reasons that he is accepting the credits there in Mammoth. And I think the reason he's opening as the same thing is because he noticed the concept worked once. He noticed the whole All-American Dave thing was a successful brand, that people liked it. So he's thinking, okay, well, I'll try in Mammoth now. And he's like an outdoorsy sort of guy, so I'm sure Mammoth isn't a coincidence. I'm sure he chose to live in Mammoth because it seems like a nice place for him to live. He probably wants to ski in the winter. He probably wants to hike in the summer. So he's going to try to run his truck from there. He has not stated what he's going to do for those who cannot come to Mammoth. He hasn't stated that he's going to just pay everyone back if he does well enough there. Like, why isn't he saying that? Why isn't he saying, okay, well, I can't guarantee how well I'll do here, but if the whole Mammoth thing succeeds, sure, I'll pay you guys back. I just got to do it slowly. Fine, at least that's a commitment to make it right. But this whole thing about, okay, if you want to come all the way to Mammoth, you can get the food you paid for. That's absurd. Like, what if he moved the truck to Estonia? Would you expect it to go to Estonia to get your lunch? Obviously not. So Mammoth, it's not as far as Estonia, but it's still like way out there and nowhere near Vegas where people were expecting to get their food. So you can't just move over 300 miles away to an isolated place 4 years later and say, hey, well, look, I'm honoring the credits. What's the problem? Now, he is admitting that this isn't an ideal situation. But okay, why doesn't he lay out what he will do if it does end up ideal? If he does do well? I think it's because he doesn't really want to. So I hope he does the right thing eventually, but this isn't it. This is not it at all, and very few people are going to get anything out of it. On his Facebook page, which I'm looking at right now, called All American Dave, it does not appear they're open yet. Well, maybe it is. It said that the soft opening would be on August 27th, quote, hopefully. This was posted on August 21st. It says, we're opening soon, but quietly. No big launch, no crew, just belief. This truck was once part of something great, and we're trying to bring it back to life one step at a time. It's not easy. We're running lean, doing what we can with what we've got, but this place, this town, this mountain, this mission, it's worth it. It's all very hokey. Mammoth Lakes, we're here, and we're just getting started. Soft opening, hopefully Wednesday, August 27th. But then there's no post about the soft opening, so maybe it was extremely soft and it didn't happen. Kind of sounds like it's just going to be him and his wife or something. It says here on August 15th, it's going to be at Kittredge Sports, which is a longtime store there in Mammoth. So maybe he's going to be in the parking lot of Kittredge Sports. So it's not like way out there as far as Mammoth is concerned. Like if you're in Mammoth, Kittredge Sports is sort of centrally located. But Mammoth itself is way out there. Like, go look at it on a map. Go look at Mammoth Lakes on the map. You'll see what I'm talking about. Well, I wouldn't count on getting your balance back anytime soon. But hey, if you're going to Mammoth, maybe stop by and redeem your credits if he owes you. But if he does not let people at least transfer them, then he's not serious. That's why I think he didn't answer me, because he doesn't want to. But that would be fair. People bought meals. So why shouldn't he serve the meals? Let people transfer them. Let people sell them to each other. That's the problem. I don't think he wants someone who comes to Mammoth all the time showing up every day and getting free food. I think he just wants the people who have balances to occasionally get a meal on him. That he's willing to do. But yeah, if you can't transfer them in some way, then he's really not being serious here. Well, since we're talking about the All-American Dave controversy, and by the way, it was not received very well. But now that we're talking about the All-American Dave controversy, let's talk about somebody else in controversy, and that is Vanessa Kade. We've talked about her on this show. Vanessa Kade had a lot of potential to be a fairly big name in poker. She has some decent poker skill. She seems to be a smart woman. She is under 40, not much under 40, but I think at least a little under 40. She is fairly attractive. So all of that combined could make one a big star fairly quickly in poker, whereas it's a lot harder to get noticed when you're a dude, or if you're a much older woman. But if you're a pretty white female under 40, and you have at least some semblance of poker results, then you will get a lot of attention and a lot of notice. And you really don't have to do all that much to keep that going. And if you think about some of the well-known and well-respected female players of the day, and I mean like right now, a lot of them aren't that flashy. A lot of them just kind of sit down and play. And they're not doing anything to sexualize themselves or constantly put themselves out there. Just they kind of sit down, they play, they do well, they get known enough, and they're a very notable name. Just a lot easier to get noticed as a female in poker. And that's fine. I'm not complaining about it. That's just the way poker is. I've never felt it was unfair to me as a male that I don't get the same attention for the same results as a female would. It doesn't bother me one bit. That's just the way it is. I happen to get into something here, poker, which is very male-heavy, and I'm a male. That's not the female's problem. So I have no issue with that. But Vanessa, and I can't follow this reasoning, she seems to believe the opposite. She seems to believe that it's a big disadvantage to be an attractive, young, white female in poker. That she's been discriminated against in poker and suffered because of her gender. And that's so absurd because she's part of the most privileged demographic in poker by a wide margin. She definitely is. And I don't like talking about privilege, but I mean, look, that is a super privileged demographic, or attractive, youngish white females in poker. Very, very, very privileged. Even if there's a few downsides to it, the upsides are huge. So she really is the last person who should be complaining about discrimination and being in an unfortunate demographic for poker and not having opportunities. It's just crazy. So here's what she wrote, and fortunately I saved it because it's gone. She deleted the tweet, but this is what she tweeted on August 21st. I also am contemplating my future here and have been for a while. Here meaning Twitter. The haters are going to love this post, but I honestly don't care. Now, as soon as I read that sentence, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to read this because it's going to be something that's just like hilariously stupid. When I first started playing, I was so full of passion I couldn't get enough. I was playing low-stakes cash games with such drive that this in no way was an exaggeration. I was playing with probably an average of 15 hours a day for 4 years, missing literally less than a week in a full year from traveling or illness. I couldn't get enough, and despite not being studied in any way, betting all the wrong sizes and intuitively playing a pure exploitative live read game, still somehow was winning right from the start. So let me stop right there. This is actually mostly true so far. I don't know about the hours she played, but I have heard reports from people from when she played in Canada, because she's Canadian, that she was winning. I don't know how much, but she was a winning player there. And this is from people that even didn't like her. Now, apparently nobody liked her there, but she was winning, so I'll give her that. I'm incredibly competitive, and winning consistently just fired me up more. I would wake up in the evening, and my first thought would be to immediately head to the casino, where I would play until sunrise and rinse and repeat for over 4 years. Every day, same thing. I loved it. I played in some incredibly hostile rooms. Low-stakes games are particularly the worst for this, but the people who are socially the worst are often the biggest losers, and women are often the easiest target, especially if you're beating them and they're angry. So you have a lot of incentive to just tolerate things or diffuse situations, but even with a thick skin, eventually wears on you and it feels heavy. Okay, I've been there too, not from the standpoint of being a woman, but I have had games where the people losing, or the biggest fish, are very abusive and nasty, and I just kind of tolerate it because the money's too good to want to leave, and I just let them act like assholes and collect the money. Whereas if this behavior is coming from a winning player, then I usually don't take it. So I will take bad behavior from a losing player much more easily. So that's basically what she's saying there. Okay, fine. Being called a bitch or a cunt and worse for doing nothing but winning pots ultimately caused me to just wear headphones and become incredibly antisocial for a period, where I continued playing and refused to talk to anyone. Now, from what I've heard from people who have both told me things directly and posted publicly on X, this isn't completely true. They said that she was always causing drama and just beefing with everybody, and that she was the only female like this in these rooms. So apparently she was a problem there in the Canadian rooms as far as getting along with people. So I think she's just blind to this. But going on, I've always felt like a bit of an outsider and have heard this sentiment echoed by other women, where we are not as easily or at all accepted into the higher quality group improvement cliques that are formed, where everyone who participates ultimately help each other. I've never used this as an excuse and have basically lone wolfed my career for all 10 years to this point without complaint, despite knowing my progress is slowed or ultimately capped by not having access to the full range of communal resources. You've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. So she's complaining that the poker study groups, which, by the way, not everybody's part of. I've never been part of one in my life. But she's complaining that everybody has access to these communal poker study groups where everyone gets together and teaches each other and shares information to improve, that they have just left her out of it because she's a woman. Let's think about this here. If you are even a semi-attractive female in poker and you want to join a group of dudes who are getting together to discuss strategy, and you're at least a decent player yourself, you being female, so it's not like you're going to come in there with dumb questions. You're someone who they would feel okay talking to from that standpoint, that they're going to say, no, go away, we don't want girls here, this is an all-boys club, get out, no girls allowed. No, this definitely doesn't happen. It's the reverse. It's much easier to get into a group like that because you're going to have dudes that are happy to have a girl there, that might have a crush on you, that might think that if they impress you enough with their poker knowledge that maybe you'll want to go out with them. And yeah, you'd rather you just let in on your own merits and not just because you're female, but the truth is you have a leg up to get in the first place. So let's say I wanted to join one of these groups. And as I said, I've never been in one in my life. If I go to some dudes who have this study group and I say, hey guys, can I come in and sit in on this thing? Can I be part of it? They'll say, well, what do you bring to the table? Why should we bring you in? Why you and not other people? Like, what's so special about you? I would get those type of questions, maybe more politely, but that's basically what they'd be asking me is like, okay, why? Why should we have you here? And if they didn't like my answers, they would just ghost me, is the truth. They'd either say no or just ghost me. And nothing personal to me. This would happen to any dude who just kind of comes to them and says, hey, let me in. It's one thing if it's your friends, but if it's just acquaintances in poker, they're not just going to openly invite you to these groups or say yes if you ask them. But if you're female, well, you might have a way in just from that. And you may not like that's the reason they're letting you in, but at least you have the option to get in. So the fact that she's complaining that she's actually shut out from being female, it makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. That's just not the way it happens in poker. Being female opens doors. It doesn't close them. She went on to write, these groups exist where young men in their early 20s who display intelligence and drive are taken under someone's wing and backed. It's just not available in the same way if you're a woman. Okay. How many young men in their early 20s do you know who are taken under somebody's wing and backed? I can think of one. One and only one. And that's Landon Tice. That's it. I can't think of any other. And somehow people just kind of found him to be charming with how wide-eyed and excited he was about poker, and there just weren't really many young people in poker anymore. So Matt Berkey brought him in to his group and then backed him, and now Landon is playing some fairly high-stakes tournaments and doing pretty well. So, good for Landon. But he's the only one I can think of like this. It's not like tons of 20s dudes are showing up in poker and all these veterans are like, let me help you. Let me take you under my wing. No. Like, he's the only one I know of. So what is she talking about? Obviously, he's the one she's referring to. But she's actually jealous of Landon Tice? What? Like, does she really think that he's getting that opportunity because he's male? He's getting that opportunity just because he was unusual also. Just like she's unusual being female in the community, he was unusual being young because people in poker are not young anymore. They were once young in the 2000s, but in the 2020s, they're not young. So a guy shows up in the 2020s who is young, and seems very excited and seems to have some potential. And Berkey took notice of him and brought him into the fold. Okay, great, Good for Landon. It worked out for him, at least so far. But he's not just some random dude. When you start seeing just 45-year-old men brought into these groups who don't really have anything unique about them, okay, then you can start complaining that everyone's getting in except you. This is just delusional. So let me go on. I never let that stop me and still managed a moderate level of success that granted me at least a little bit of voice, and I tried to use it to bring visibility to things like treatment of women at low stakes, attempting to put a lot of pressure on casinos and their floor staff to step up intervention when someone is being bullied and there's a power imbalance that causes the targeted party to be unable to stand up for themselves. Something that sours initial experiences for new players, since most of us start in low stakes where egos are the most fragile and players are the most volatile, which ultimately turns a lot of women away. I tried to draw visibility to the lack of effort in attracting women to the game despite them being the largest completely untapped demographic. Let me stop right there again. Nobody asked her to do this, and she's never done this in a way that is endearing to people. It's just been very abrasive and confrontational, and people don't want to hear it, especially because it's exaggerated. And I know this from watching women in poker for many, many years now. And yes, I haven't even personally witnessed it, but I believe the stories that sometimes women will encounter rude guys who either make sexual comments to them or just can't take being beaten by a woman at the table and start being rude or try to ask them out. I'm sure there's downsides to being a woman at the table, but the truth is when I have seen women at the table in my games, which is a lot of games I've played by now, of course, I've seen them treated respectfully. I have not seen this stuff happen. I think it's more the exception than the rule. I think it happens sometimes, but I don't think it's an epidemic that when women sit down, they're going to get just horribly treated because they're female. Because I have news for you, Vanessa. Men get treated crappily too. When fish are angry that they're losing, they will abuse everybody. They will abuse other men. I know this because I've been on that end. I have had fish make nasty remarks when they're losing. I've had them talk shit. I've even had some threaten to kick my ass and other things like this. I've had very obnoxious people at the table. Not all the time, not commonly, but occasionally it happens. So to say this is just happening to females, she's already exaggerating. I'm not saying this doesn't happen at all. I'm saying it's not to this extent. And the reason that poker is mostly male is just the game mostly appeals to males. It's not that it would be half female if just for the males treating people better, treating women better. But nobody has told her that she needs to be the low-stakes female's superhero. She just decided to take this upon herself. And I think it's partially because she got into conflicts with people when she was playing in Canada at low stakes, and she remembers that, and she is assuming it has to do with her gender rather than maybe just her personality. Anyway, here it gets even more ridiculous. At least up to this point, you can say, well, at least she's trying to do the right thing. At least she's trying to stand up for women who are mistreated. I mean, how can you criticize that? Well, okay, fine. At least that sounds noble. At least, even if she's exaggerating in her mind how bad it is, at least she's coming at that from a perspective of trying to be helpful. So I can't criticize that too much, but wait till you get to the next part. Discrepancy in compensation for sponsored female players. To this date, the highest paid female sponsored player I'm aware of was somewhere around the $350K a year mark, while the highest male gets $1.2 million a month. Now she's referring to, I'm sure, is Negreanu. Last I heard, she says, more now as I understand. And while no one would argue that the top men clearly have a greater reach and influence, it is so laughably out of proportion that their relative marketing value, $14.4 million a year versus $350K a year, that even if the top women only have 10% of the exposure, that number should still be more like $1.4 million a year. And they're appealing to audiences with potential for massively more growth, where every 30 to 40-year-old white male they add to the roster is just overlapping with representations which I'm sure carry significant diminishing returns. That's just such a tone deaf and incorrect statement. Where do I even start? The one area that females in poker, especially young females, have an absolute several orders of magnitude tremendous edge over males is sponsorships. It's not even close. It is so much easier for pretty and even semi-pretty girls to get sponsored in poker. They don't have to do very much. They don't have to win very much. They just have to be there, be present, be noticed, and occasionally, cash or win a little bit. And I really mean occasionally. That's all you need. Yet if you're a dude, you could be crushing it. You could be winning and winning and winning, and you still may not get sponsored. You still may have a very hard time getting any poker site or poker room to give you a penny. It is very hard these days to get sponsorships as a male. But as a female, it is orders of magnitude easier. Now, I'm not even just saying this in theory. I know a female who got a sponsorship at a major online poker site whose biggest live cash was under 20K. It was 19K. And in fact, she only had one five-figure cash in the prior 5 years to the sponsorship. So if you go back 5 years from when this sponsorship happened in March of 2021, this female I'm talking about had one cash that was over 10,000 in those past 5 years. And her biggest cash ever live was 19K. Who was that female? That female's name was Vanessa Kade. Yes, the person complaining about opportunities for females in sponsorship in poker. The person complaining about that got a sponsorship with ACR in March of 2021 when her biggest live cash was under 20K and when she had just one five-figure cash in the prior 5 years. Now go ahead, tell me a single male who got sponsored with numbers like that, aside from someone who is already famous outside of poker. So I'm not talking about someone like Will Wheaton when he got sponsored by Pokerstars. I'm not talking about existing famous people. I'm saying someone who was not famous outside of poker. Tell me one male ever that got sponsored like that. I bet you can't find one. You definitely can't find one in modern times. So what the hell is she talking about here? She got sponsored with those crappy numbers back then. Now, it's true shortly after that, she won that big tournament on Pokerstars for $1.5 million. But prior to that, she didn't have any significant cashes live or online. But she got a sponsorship anyway. So instead of saying, wow, sometimes it sucks being female in poker, but boy, this is one big edge, the fact that we get sponsorship so easily, she complains that they're not paid enough. And she's comparing herself to Negreanu. She's comparing other females who've gotten sponsorships to Negreanu. The reason Negreanu gets a lot of money is because he is the main face of GG Poker. And he's arguably the biggest name in the world in poker, as far as who people know. If he's not, it's very close. So he's one of the most famous poker players in the world. I think we can all agree with that. He's been around for a very long time. He was the main face of GG Poker, which also became very successful. And he was there on the ground floor promoting it. He wasn't there right at the beginning, but he was there before they got big. And he became the face of it and heavily promoted it. It's now the biggest site in the world. So, of course, he's getting paid a lot of money. He probably was given some percentage ownership. That's just my guess. I don't know if he was or wasn't, but either he is paid a whole lot or he is a partial owner, and that's why he's getting such big distributions every month. But good for him, He's good for the game. He's a good person to have as the face of a site. They became very successful with him being the main face of it, so of course he's getting paid. She can't compare herself or any other women to him. And the truth is, she can talk about the untapped market all she wants. The bottom line is, There's been female poker ambassadors for many years now, for more than 2 decades, and we're just not getting women into the game. We're getting a few here and there, but that's it. So obviously it just isn't working. So to say, oh, just hire a woman and you'll get this big untapped market signing up. No, you're not. This has been tried for 2 decades. It's not working. But that's absurd. Of all things to complain about, the sponsorships. I mean, they talk about just really, really being out there. And she's not complaining on behalf of all women. She's complaining on behalf of herself. She's basically saying, I'm being discriminated against. I'm a white female under 40 in the game. I got a sponsorship with no results at the time, but I'm a victim of gender-based discrimination. Oh, my goodness. Then she went on to write, I personally gave up a career-defining position where I could have played fully backed nosebleed high rollers of 50K buy-ins or more and was positioned to skyrocket to make a name for myself, all because I had an ethical problem with the company being disingenuous, even though I knew full well I would likely not get these opportunities to launch into the top ranks ever again. That's an incredible sentence here. Let's go over this one again, then I'll tell you why this is so absurd. She said, I personally gave up a career-defining position where I could have played fully backed nosebleed high rollers. Those are 50K buy-in events and above, things that I've never even come close to playing myself, and was positioned to skyrocket to make a name for myself, all because I had an ethical problem with the company being disingenuous, even though I knew I would never get this opportunity ever again, basically, is what she's saying. So wait a minute. She's complaining that females don't get an opportunity in poker, and then she says, oh yeah, but I did have this opportunity. I actually did have this opportunity where I could have been backed into 50K and higher events, and I turned it down. Well, okay. Vanessa, guess how many backing opportunities I've turned down where I could have been put in high rollers with no risk to me? Guess how many? How many times have I said, thanks, but no thanks. Thanks for offering to put me in this 50K, this 100K, but no, I'm going to have to pass and not play them. How many times do you think I've gotten those offers in my 25 years in the game?
0.0.
How many times have the vast majority of male poker pros received these offers?
0.0.
Why do you think you got these offers, Vanessa? Is it because you're so much better than all these males who are not getting these offers? Or might it be because you're female? Why did you get those offers? And you have the nerve to complain that you're a victim of discrimination when you got offered to be put fully backed into high roller events. Oh, what a tough life. She said, I've spoken out against prominent ambassadors who are openly misogynistic and harmful to the disappointing perception and respect shown towards women in our industry, and again, got monetarily punished for it. No, you didn't. You spoke out against Dan Bilzerian when he was being a jerk, when he was a GG ambassador at the time, and you were lauded for it. People took your side. People were happy you did it. People were praising you left and right. And in fact, this is what led to your ACR sponsorship, right? So you weren't monetarily punished for it. Instead, you were given, as you even said in the previous sentence, a, quote, career-defining position where you could have played fully backed high rollers. That's what you got for it. You didn't get punished. What she's referring to about the punishment was how she ended up losing her GG affiliate money because, amazingly, she thought that while she was getting GG affiliate money, that she could bash them left and right on Twitter and they'd keep paying her. Like, do you not understand what affiliate money is and why you get it? Do you understand that affiliate money is for promoting a site? And if you are bashing the site that is paying you to promote it, they're not going to pay you anymore? And she'll say, oh, well, I wasn't paid to advertise for them. I was paid to refer players, and these players were still playing there and generating rake, and I was supposed to keep getting a percentage of the rake. And my answer is, yeah, if you don't try to also hurt the company, which you were. You didn't like that they hired Bilzerian, who, I don't like. He's an anti-Semitic piece of shit. But you didn't like that they hired him, and you kept bashing them over and over and over again. So what are they going to do? Keep paying you? Of course they're not. So you weren't monetarily punished. You just did something stupid. You were biting the hand that was feeding you. She went on to write, it is also significantly more difficult to find higher stakes backing, especially if you refuse any deal with unsavory strings. Okay. So she's basically saying it's harder to find high stakes backing when you're female unless you agree to have sex or do sexual stuff with the dudes that are backing you. Now, I will acknowledge there are some backing deals which have a sexual element to them. It's something that's not discussed very much, but it's the truth. There are females in poker who get backed because they have sex with their backer. And, that's the reality of life. That's something that goes on. But I'll tell you something. They can always just say no. They can say, no, I won't take those opportunities. I will not accept money from men who are going to tie it to things that are sexual or tie it to going out with them. That if men don't want to back me on my own merits, that I won't take their backing. You can do that. You apparently did do that. And many women have done that. But you know what? That puts you on the same footing, at worst, as the men. Because once again, how many times you think that guys have offered to back me in exchange for sex?
0.0.
So you may say, well, that's my point. You don't have to put up with that. But my point is I don't even have the option. Let's say I was willing to have gay sex to get backed into big events. Well, too bad. There's not going to be guys who would pay me to enter these events so they could have sex with me. That just isn't out there, I wouldn't want it, but I'm saying if I wanted it, I couldn't have it. So the fact that you have this option, you can say this is an option you don't want, and that's understandable. But I don't see how you can complain that the option exists when you can just say no to it. And furthermore, it's not as simple as you're saying. There's a lot of dudes who are happy to get a foot in the door and not have direct strings to being backed. There are dudes who might back a female in poker and hope that also it can become something more one day. That maybe the female will be impressed that the guy is backing her, and then they can get closer, and then she'll fall for him. So it doesn't need to be either you get backed completely on your own merits as a poker player, or you're getting backed because you're having sex. It can be kind of in the middle, where a guy backs you because he likes you, but he's also never going to say, hey, have sex with me or blow me if you want this backing or otherwise tough luck. The guy may just kind of be hoping it becomes something, but otherwise never say anything about it. And that's really, a lot of the backing is kind of like that females get. It's by guys who are just kind of hoping that it becomes more, but never directly attach anything to it. I don't think anybody who's familiar with the poker community would think it's harder to get backed as a female, even if you want to say that the female who does not trade sexual favors for backing, it's still easier for her. It's still an easier thing for her to get backed, even if she won't do that. So it's another absurd thing to complain about. Then she goes on and brings up another Vanessa Selbst. She said Vanessa Selbst herself spoke about how one of the major reasons she quit was that she couldn't get backing. Women are simply seen as not as skilled and lack the connections because of being on the outside of the communities. Okay, again, completely out of touch. Vanessa Selbst, for all her problems, for all the negative and deserved negative perceptions of her, that is for her personality, which is very abrasive and obnoxious and arrogant, one thing that is not the case about Vanessa Selbst is a lack of respect for her play. There was tremendous respect for Vanessa Selbst's play in the 2000s when she was crushing. Everybody was aware of it. Everybody knew that Vanessa Selbst's style was working very well in 2000s poker. So people don't hate money. plenty of people would have backed Vanessa Selbst when she was crushing it in the 2000s, regardless of her gender and even regardless of her sexuality. She's a lesbian, but no one would have cared about that. If she can win them money, of course dudes would have backed her. I would have backed her for that reason. The reason she was having trouble getting backing in the 2010s was her style stopped working. She was too spewy. The good players came up with a good counter to what she was doing. She didn't adjust, and she was just chunking off money at a very high rate. So nobody wanted to back her, not because she's female and they didn't see her as worthy. It was because they noticed that her style wasn't working anymore. And separate from that, she was just an unpleasant person. So people didn't even say, hey, you know what? Her style isn't quite working anymore, but she's a nice person. She deserves some backing anyway. And nobody even wanted to give this a chance because she was just very unpleasant to everybody, male and female. And that's well known in the community. So I don't know why she's throwing out Vanessa Selbst out there, because this is someone who, if you ignore gender, was just not very nice to people, both online and in person. That's such a weird victim she's choosing here. And then this whole thing about how women are shut out from networks. Again, no, you're not shut out. She put some of the few women I know who've gotten high-level backing is in whole or part through connections with their romantic partners who are part of the same networks we're often excluded from, a couple without those ins, but not many. So this is really just degrading other women. It's saying, yeah, the women who got to be part of these groups, it's because they had boyfriends who were already in there. That's how they got in. They're not going to get in on their own. They're not good enough to do that. So they got in, but it's not from anything they did. It was a guy who helped them. And I don't have a guy to help me, so unfair. That's basically what she's saying here. Well, here's the truth. If you are unpleasant, whether you're male or female, they're definitely not going to invite you to these groups. And the general perception of Vanessa Kade is that she's unpleasant, just like the general perception of Vanessa Selbst is that she's unpleasant. But there are many other women in poker that have a very positive reputation, where people do enjoy being around them, where people think they're nice, where people think that they are pleasant. And Vanessa's just not one of them. Neither of these Vanessas are. So maybe that's why you're being shut out. And maybe that's why other women are getting in, because those women are not always difficult with everybody. And you know what? There's a lot of men in poker who are jerks too. And you know what? They're also shut out. And I'm not talking about the ones who are already established and already in these groups, but if like an outsider, as you call yourself, if he's a jerk, if he's abrasive to everybody, they're not going to let him in. The only way they let him in is if he's just absolutely crushing it and they want to learn his secrets. But if he's just a regular pro, they're not going to let him in to improve when they hate him. So what are you talking about here? Again, this is not an excuse, as I have successfully chugged along for 10 years mostly as a lone wolf. Just an acknowledgement that there are so many hurdles that make things so much harder. Oh yeah, the hurdles for females to get sponsorships. The hurdles to find guys who will help them improve. What is she talking about? Do you know how much free coaching I could find if I were a pretty female? Do you know how many sponsorships I could have had by now if I were a pretty female? And I could accomplish this without having sex with anybody. If you turned me into an attractive under 40 female and said, hey, go find backing, go find sponsorships, go find guys who will help you improve and teach you things, I could do all of that without doing anything sexual with anybody. And she knows that, but she's willfully blind to it. In one case, I had a sponsorship. I had a fellow ambassador I'd never even interacted with repeatedly attacking me, unprovoked, over a course of a year, despite being told multiple times to stop. And after ignoring much of it, I finally defended myself, somehow came off looking just as bad as him when he was the instigator and attacker in every single case. She's talking about Ryan DePaulo. And we've talked about that before on this show. In fact, I think that was the last time I discussed her, was about DePaulo. And in fact, he listened to the segment, and he said he enjoyed it. I don't know if she heard the segment. But it is true, when she came to ACR, that DiPaolo expressed that he didn't like the way she was behaving. And basically what he was saying is, stop obsessing over this whole Bilzerian thing. Stop always acting like you're the victim. A lot of what you're doing out there on Twitter is making all of us look bad as ACR pros. It's just you're whining too much. Please stop. So whether you think that's right or wrong, that was how he felt about her. And they went back and forth fighting about this. And yes, ACR got very sick of the whole thing. ACR did not like having two pros at each other's throats. Most of this was happening behind the scenes and in their pro chat. But it was a pain in the ass for them to deal with there. And yeah, they didn't really like it. The problem is that there wasn't a lot of support for her there, because I think a lot of the people who were the pros, while they didn't like Ryan's approach, some of them, they kind of also knew he was right. So it was one of these things like, yeah, we kind of agree with him. He's just being a little abrasive about this. But yeah, he's kind of correct here. So they were, yeah, some of them were saying, hey, Ryan, you should probably knock this off. And, why are you doing this? You're going too far. You're being too confrontational. But you didn't get people saying, hey, Ryan, you got this all wrong. Vanessa's a very sweet person with pure motives that are never selfish or out of touch. And, yeah, she makes us all look great with always complaining on Twitter and saying she's the victim. That really helps ACR's perception. I don't know what you're talking about, Ryan. Everyone loves her. Like they didn't say that because no one felt that way. So eventually they were both fired. Right, I think he was fired and she quit, but they were happy to let her quit, basically. They were kind of done with both of them. He wasn't fired over this. He was fired over some ticky-tack reason about accepting a sponsorship from something else that wasn't directly competing with them, but it was still a violation, so they booted him. But I really think they were just kind of sick of both of them. They were happy to have her quit, and they were happy to have a reason to terminate his contract. And, of course, ACR has a lot of its own problems, so I'm not saying they're a bunch of angels over there, because they're not. She was right that she said she came off looking as bad as him in the whole thing because, yeah, I mean, she was engaging in a lot of this and she wasn't quite understanding the point he was trying to make is, hey, you're an ACR ambassador now. Can you try to tone down all the stuff that is turning people off to you? And she just wasn't getting it. She went on to write, some of these guys say unimaginably vile things on the regular, publicly, and all kinds of topics with no consequences whatsoever to their partnership prospects and are effectively untouchable. But women do not carry this immunity. When women diplomatically express reasonable opinions, flag issues, or defend themselves, correct lies that have been levied against them, or participate in public discussions, they are labeled obnoxious, annoying, quote, the problem, or just as bad as the men acting atrociously. Well, you have to understand this. When you say that people are saying unimaginably vile things and they don't get consequences, it depends what type of vile things. So if they're just saying things that are politically incorrect or overtly sexual or whatever, expressing controversial political opinions, whatever it might be, that bothers people less in poker than someone who has already gotten a lot of privilege in the game constantly complaining that they're the victim. That really puts people off. It really does. Because most dudes in the game kind of know the way it is. Like, we all know that it's much harder for us to get sponsorships and backing and favors compared to young, attractive women. But we don't resent it. We just know that's the way it is. But where the resentment can come is when the person getting all this privilege is acting like they're the victim. They're the ones who are facing the discrimination. They're the ones who are getting less than everybody else. So that puts off a lot of people, and that's why people are like, can you cut this out? We don't like it. Nobody likes this. And by the way, notice that there are not any prominent females in poker speaking up and saying, yeah, Vanessa's right. You have a few like fringe females who are on X a lot that are part of the poker community that said something supportive back to her. But any prominent female in the game, even ones that are active on X, not one of them said, yeah, Vanessa's been fighting for us so much, she deserves better. None of them defended her. All of them just stayed out of it. And yet other females in the game, if they're attacked, you will get absolutely swarmed by their female friends and even just other females who aren't friends with them but respect them, that will jump all over you. And that didn't happen here. She did not have any other females who were prominent in the game backing her and saying, hey, she's right. Hey, her intentions have been great. Hey, she deserves better. No, none of them did it. Why is that? Why didn't other females speak up for her like they do for other women in the game? It's because they don't like her. That's why. Because they don't like her personality. They find her just as annoying as the dudes do. Then she wrote, at the end of the day, if you want to be a successful woman in poker, the only way is to play the game, keep your opinions to yourself, and be thin, young, and attractive, and post cleavage shots, or in a couple of cases I like better, make sincerely funny content. Now, the last thing she's talking about are people like Marley Cordero or Caitlin Komeski, who have made some comedy poker videos and gotten attention that way. So she's saying that, that's a better way to do it, but they still have to do something extra to get attention. And others, what they have to do if they don't want to go that route is they have to just post cleavage shots and already be attractive so guys want to look at the cleavage shots. And if you don't do that, you're not going to get anywhere in the game. She wrote, we don't actually reward women to the same degree for developing skill or finding success or getting big scores as players, and I find this incredibly depressing. Oh, really? Oh, really? Okay. Kristen Foxen, Alex Foxen's wife, formerly Kristen Bicknell, she gets a lot of accolades. She gets a lot of attention for being probably the best female in the game right now. She gets a lot more attention than she would if she were a dude. Now, she does not sexualize herself. She's never done that once. She's never posted cleavage shots. She doesn't make funny content. She just sits and plays and does well. So why is there so much positive attention on Kristen Foxen? Even, and by the way, you may say, well, she just kept her head down and hasn't expressed controversial opinions. Wrong. That's absolutely wrong. She has. Because during the COVID pandemic, when it was at its worst in 2020 and 2021, when the vaccine came out, she was very openly anti-vax, and it pissed a lot of people off. She doesn't usually come out with strong opinions, but she came out with very strong opinions about the vaccine, as did her then boyfriend, now husband, Alex. And it put a lot of people off. And she didn't stop. She just kept doing it. She didn't give a shit what you thought of her. She still stated her anti-vax opinions, and a lot of people didn't like that. But you know what? Years later, when people see Kristen Foxen running deep in the main event or winning other events, and there's comments on X about her, there's very few people mentioning the anti-vax stuff. And she never apologized for it or changed her mind. She doesn't talk about it much anymore because it's not really relevant, but she never backpedaled away from that. And yet somehow everybody talks about her skill. Everybody talks about how good she is, how she's the best female tournament player right now. A lot of positive comments about Kristen Foxen only due to her poker success. And despite the fact that she took a very controversial position about the vaccine in 2021 and stated it over and over and over again. So how come she is not suffering this same, quote, discrimination as you feel that you are? I wonder what the reason might be. Both of you expressed controversial opinions. Both of you wouldn't sexualize yourselves. I mean, yeah, she has a boyfriend, but that's not the reason that she's known. That's something interesting about her, that she has a very successful male, poker playing boyfriend here, but that's not why she's known. She's not just Mrs. Alex Foxen. So why don't you compare yourself to her? Or compare yourself to Maria Ho, who's also respected and doesn't sexualize herself. Why don't you look at women like that and say, why do people have respect for these women? Why do people say positive things about these women, and why do they attack you? There's got to be a reason. There's got to be a difference, right? Regarding the requirements to get noticed, she also wrote, if I played the game where I only posted tastefully sexy photos and kept my mouth shut, I would be light years ahead in terms of sponsorship and partnership income and public approval, and it's incredibly depressing. I even tried that avenue briefly years ago and just felt icky about it, and it was not authentically me. Well, the first part's true. Yes, if you just posted nice-looking photos and didn't constantly complain about everything and didn't constantly act like you're the victim when you're actually gotten tremendous privilege in the game, then yes, people would like you better. It's one of these things, if you don't have something nice to say, maybe you shouldn't say it. So yes, it is much easier to get sponsorships as a female if you don't put everybody off by constantly complaining and being a pain in the ass. Why is that hard to understand? And by the way, if you posted about legitimate wrongs, people would be on your side, as they were with the Bilzerian thing. You were right in the case of Bilzerian. You went on about it too long and obsessed over it too long and harassed GG too long about it, but initially you were right. And people noticed that. And they elevated you from a relative unknown to someone that most people were aware of. So you see, it's not just that you can't speak out. It's more that you can't speak out about stupid things that aren't true and then act like the victim. And then get nasty with people and block them if they don't agree with you, which is also something you do all the time. She went on to write, simultaneously, the personal cost for being outspoken has been life-alteringly high, as I often do not feel as though I've made any impact on the things I was trying to change for the better. Okay. Well, let me tell you this. I speak out about things a lot, as you probably know. And I have people that don't like me for that reason. And yes, my being outspoken has had a price as well. That's not a gender thing. That's just a being outspoken thing. That the more you say that's controversial, the more you're going to get pushback from people who disagree with it. Whereas if you don't say anything controversial at all, you're not going to get much negative attention. But you chose to say things that are controversial, and thus you must deal with the consequence, much as I do. And as far as you not making an impact on the things you're trying to change for the better, maybe because your approach sucks. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe people are not open to the message because your message isn't good. Notice you do not have many females open to your message. Why do you think that is? She finishes off writing, I could double down and pour myself into improvement and grinding. I could stay and play the game they want and leave the discussions to the men, keep my opinions to myself, and exclusively post poker results and selfies, or I could consider a bigger life change out of poker. I'm not sure what's next, but I'm disappointed with what I've cost myself and how little it seemed to change things for the better. I've booked out some self-reflection time and will probably be off socials, meaning social media, for a while I think about it. I've booked out some self-reflection time is very off-putting and obnoxious to say. Who'd you book it with? Yourself? How about just saying, I'm going to be off social media for a while as I consider my next move in life? That's fine to say at the end. What's I booked out some self-reflection time? That's just so pretentious sounding. Anyway, this is someone who mostly doesn't get it. If she really thinks that she is lacking opportunities because of her gender, and now she's so frustrated about that she may quit the game or quit social media, what a dumb reason to quit. Maybe you should look at why other people have succeeded where you failed. How come your message is not being received well? Is it because you're female or is it because of you? There are shitty people and annoying people and frustrating people and assholes in both genders. There are very abrasive and obnoxious and unpleasant men, and many of them are in poker, and I've talked about the ones I don't like, that I find that way. And that's not because I hate men, obviously. But there are some men in the game I really dislike. And then there's also women in the game I dislike. And there's people in the game who dislike me. That's the way it works. It's human nature. But maybe she should look at herself and see why, one, there's so much negative reaction to her, and two, why she's not getting support from other women. So the reaction to this was not very positive. Aside from a few no-name simps who were encouraging her to keep her chin up, most of the response was negative. Now, she came back with some further condescending tweets, such as, next time I feel like discussing anything on Twitter that requires people to have a 5th grade reading comprehension to follow, someone talk me out of it and tell me to go for a walk in the sun instead. My observations merit discussion because visibility is the first step to bettering things, but not on a platform that rewards people for maliciously misinterpreting the message and drowning out any productive discussion through attacks via anonymous accounts. A few times I've been offered a column on the news sites and magazines and never followed up. Maybe that's a better place, or even the blog space. I mean, that's zero self-awareness. She was mad that people were pointing out to her that it's so much easier for females to get sponsorship. And she's saying, oh, no, you don't have good reading comprehension. What I'm saying is that the females can get sponsorships, but they don't get paid enough. But that's bullshit. That's complete bullshit. The males don't get paid much either unless they're really, really big names, much bigger than hers. So yeah, the Daniel Negreanu's get a ton of money to be the face of the site. But the few males that do get sponsorships, it's a tiny percentage of male poker pros who get the sponsorships at all. And of those, most of them don't get much money for it. So just because Negreanu gets a ton, that means that it's unfair to women? It's just such weird reasoning. And she definitely implied that it was harder to get sponsorships being female. And she was definitely complaining about the sponsorship situation overall and relating to herself. She was definitely complaining about how being female has held her back in all these different ways where it's actually easier. It's just a ridiculous essay. Doug Polk had no patience for Vanessa's shenanigans. He tweeted, 1, most of the best women in the history did well because they are or were great at poker, such as Vanessa Selfs, Jennifer Harmon, Kristen Foxen. 2, poker is a combo of luck plus meritocracy. The cards don't know or care what your gender is. And 3, if you want to share controversial opinions, it will make you less marketable to most poker companies. I spent 12 years as a top player and personality with no sponsor. Your post comes off across as tone deaf and belittles women who made their careers by actually being good at poker. Correct, Mr. Polk. And he's taking credit for not being completely marketable himself for being controversial and being somewhat of a troll. So he said, look, I made my own way. I have a successful channel. I have successful engagement and successful companies that I built myself and got an audience through being controversial. But yeah, places didn't want to hire me. So same thing for you. You're going to be controversial. They don't want to hire you. It's easy. I mean, it's not about you being female. A guy named Ron, DJ Clicker 77, he wrote, 99.9% of male players never get any kind of sponsorship. It's hard to find a female player who didn't. It's so skewed in their favor that some just get delusionally entitled like Vanessa just did. Correct. Person named Poker Caddy, who tried to somewhat defend her, but even found himself turned off. He said, I like Vanessa's mind. She's definitely sharp, which I agree with, by the way. She's smart. She's not a dumb person. She's saying dumb things, but she's a smart person. But then he wrote, I don't like how often it inevitably devolves into crying the victim in some way, shape, or form. Exactly. That view of life caps her range. So he's basically saying, yeah, she's smart, but I just don't like how eventually she just claims she's the victim of everything. It's just insufferable, especially because she's not. So there are a lot of comments like these. She's really somebody who has some smart opinions on things. There's stuff she's posted about the community that I've agreed with, and I've even talked about on the show. So I don't just like auto take the other position when she posts something. There's been times I totally think she's right. And she's a smart person. But she's also just very self-unaware and out of touch and always looking for an excuse to blame someone else for things not being ideal. And I think it speaks volumes that other women are not supportive of her. When your whole routine is being a big defender of women in poker, a big poker feminist, and the women in poker don't want your help, that should say something to you. That should kind of give you a clue that what you think you're doing is not actually that helpful. I haven't checked since late August what's going on with her, and, you know, I've kind of had enough of her for right now, so I don't even care. But that was an interesting back and forth that went on for a while, and that was the main focus, actually, on poker Twitter in like the August 21st to 25th range. Let's get to something a bit more serious. California has decided that they are going to be banning the sweepstakes-style poker and gambling sites, and it's pretty likely that this is going to be taking effect very soon. Sweepstakes-style gambling sites, including poker, exist because it's seen as a legal loophole, which up until recently wasn't challenged very aggressively, but now it's really ramping up. And I knew this was going to happen. I knew this time would come, because to me it seemed ridiculous that this could be considered legal. The reason these are legal is because a long time ago there was a carve-out in gambling law related to sweepstakes. So this way companies could hold sweepstakes without being prosecuted in some way for facilitating illegal gambling. Now, in order to separate sweepstakes from actual gambling or actual lottery-type gambling, they had to offer entries into the sweepstakes for free. So that's why you would always see when companies would have sweepstakes that you could technically write into some P.O. box and they would send you an entry or enter you into the sweepstakes. So someone figured out that they could build poker around a sweepstakes model where you're not playing directly for cash, you're playing for sweepstakes entries, which then will win cash. That's basically how it works. Now, I think that's bullshit. I don't mind that these operate. I don't really care if they operate or not. I'm just saying that I think the legal concept behind this is bullshit. Because this is not real sweepstakes. Nobody sees this as sweepstakes. And it makes sense that some governments are starting to clamp down on this. Now, California has no legal online gambling of any kind. There's no legal online poker. There's no legal online sports betting. In fact, you can't sports bet at all in the state. There's no legal online casino games. There's just nothing. You cannot do any kind of online gambling in California. California is also the most populous state by a good margin. So, of course, these sites want to be in California. The big three poker sweepstakes sites are ClubWPTGold, which, of course, is newer, GlobalPoker, which has been around for a while, and ClubGG, which is an extension of GG Poker. There are also non-poker sweepstakes gambling sites out there like stake.us. But it is highly likely that a law is going to pass very shortly in California making these illegal, because it has already cleared the Senate committee with a unanimous vote. So it's very likely that it's going to become law. At the moment, it's going on to full Senate consideration, but it's probably going to pass the full Senate vote by a wide majority. And really, nobody is openly opposing it. Governor Gavin Newsom is unlikely to oppose it. This is a bill that is mostly supported by the Indian tribes, and he's been seen doing their bidding in recent years because they have donated to some of his pet causes, such as propositions. So if the Indian tribes generally want this law, which will eliminate some of their competition, then he's likely to support this bill. So he's presumably going to sign it, and it does not have any future date that it would take effect. So that means by California law, it will be immediate. It's likely that whatever is done, that the sites will have some time to bring down operations and then shut out California members completely. So they probably will not pass the law and say, okay, now if you operate for 1 minute longer, you're going to be prosecuted. It's going to be, okay, well, this is now the law, so close everything down within 3 weeks, something like that, as far as California residents are concerned. However, there is a chance that this will not become law, or it'll be modified in some way, or that this will lead to something else that allows these sites to continue. There is a band of Indians, and this is reported by Haley Hintz in a good article she wrote on her blog, on her Substack. There is this small Indian tribe called the Sherwood Valley Band of Pomo Indians that is against this bill called AB 831. This tribe claimed that a blanket ban on online sweepstakes places undue hardship on small tribes like theirs. There were a few other tribes that expressed opposition to this bill. 2 of those tribes have already signed partnerships with online sweepstakes sites. So the thinking might be that if they can push these existing sites out of the market with their current ownership, that some deal can be struck that these sites can continue only if they partner with these Indian tribes. So it could be one of these things of, okay, you can't continue operating in California and this is really going to hurt you, but if you partner with us, then you can still operate. And so it may just be these Indian tribes' way of forcing themselves into that market and doing so with the existing sites. Right now, there is no law in California that regulates online gambling. So this would actually be the first law that would regulate it if sweepstakes sites ended up being legal but had certain restrictions. So this may be some sort of sneaky play to force the tribes into these companies which otherwise would not have had them. It might be let the Indian tribes be part of this whole thing, give them an interest in the company, give them some kind of partnership, and this whole thing goes away. So we'll have to see. In the meantime, ClubWPTGold, which had 2 different forms of coins you could use on the site. Remember, you can't play directly for cash. There were what they called gold coins and sweeps coins. And these were 2 different kinds of coins you could use for different purposes on their system. And it's a little bit confusing. So the gold coins were a free play currency that you can buy or earn, but they couldn't be redeemed for any prizes, where sweeps coins you could exchange for cash or for gift cards, and those you receive for free. The gold coins were ones that were not supposed to have any kind of monetary value and could not be exchanged for any prizes of any real value, but you could buy them to get them in the first place, to play the play money with them. And also you got some for free anyway whenever you would buy sweeps coins. So for whatever reason, they have killed the gold coins part and left the sweeps coins. They just made this announcement. They haven't said why, but that's what they've done. Haley Hintz, in an article about this, thinks that it's possible they might be going towards a ClubWPT model, because they have an existing site called ClubWPT that's not ClubWPTGold, that is a membership site, and there's a monthly subscription that gives you access to tournaments for prizes. So that's how they get money there. ClubWPT is people subscribing there. So there's a thought that maybe they will just basically duplicate that model and require a subscription to get these gold coins. So it's not really clear what's going on, but there are some thoughts that maybe what precipitated this was California's action, and they're kind of pivoting to be something else. If you are in California and you want to play on one of these sweepstakes poker sites, you may not have long before they kick you out of the market. But I don't think any of them are going to stiff you, so I think you can keep playing safely, and then you'll probably get your money when they close down, because they're not completely closing down, they're just closing you down as a California resident. So I would just continue playing as normal, unless you're kind of done there anyway, then just withdraw. But I don't think it's going to stay that long unless this really is just a big game to get the Indians involved in this too. I want to tell you about this weird thing that happened to this AI company founder in Las Vegas, and the news coverage of what occurred, and how my opinion of what happened here differs from the news coverage, but I think there's a decent chance I'm right. There is a young man named Blake Owens who lives in Las Vegas. He is the CEO of Agrippa. I think that's how you pronounce it. Agrippa, which is an AI real estate firm which claims it will forever change the real estate brokerage model. And he shocked everyone by showing a picture online of a package that he received in the mail that when he opened it had a bloody pig's head in it. Just the pig's head that had been cut off the body of the pig. That, along with a threatening note, is what he received in the mail. Not only was this reported to the police, but he also brought this to the media. So I'll read you the threatening note. It starts off, Clark Kent knockoff, comma. So like it's addressing him as the Clark Kent knockoff. Now, that's kind of funny. If you look at his picture, he does kind of have a Clark Kent look to him. So this is Clark Kent knockoff. A simple Google search goes a long way these days, especially in Vegas. Saw your Marcus video. What a joke. Marcus video is some video he did about the company. AI is not going to replace brokers. Clearly you don't understand real estate wasn't built by developers or investors. And it sure as hell wasn't built by tech guys in Lululemon. It was built by brokers. We did it the hard way. No shortcuts, no tech, just people. So enjoy your moment while it lasts. And don't get greedy, because pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. And then it's signed -M, just the letter M. Well, this got a lot of attention, at least for the moment, in the news media, even national news media like the New York Post. Because it was kind of interesting. You know, this guy is the CEO of a firm that's trying to change the way that real estate brokers work. It's trying to have AI take over and do the whole thing, basically. And supposedly, one of the old school brokers there who's angry at him for starting to threaten their business, their longtime business, cut off a pig's head, sent it to him in the mail, and then put in this note that was vaguely threatening at the end about, don't get greedy because pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. So what's going on here, and what's the story with his AI company? Is it really just crushing it so much in the Vegas real estate market that brokers are getting nervous? Well, I think not. In fact, my guess, and it's only a guess, this is just a theory, I don't have any proof of this or any direct evidence, but my guess is that Mr. Owens sent that package and letter to himself. Now, why would I think that? Why would he send himself a bloody pig's head? Why would he send himself an insulting and somewhat threatening letter? Well, you've heard the phrase, any publicity is good publicity. And that's definitely the case here. If this brings people attention to his company, then it's a positive. especially if he's not actually under any threat, because if he sent this threat to himself, then obviously he's not. So I'll tell you the things that I found suspect about this letter. First of all, Clark Kent knockoff, while kind of funny, is not really an insult. It's not like Clark Kent was supposed to be an ugly guy. It's just Superman with glasses on, basically. So calling him a Clark Kent knockoff is not an insult that's so terrible he wouldn't want the world reading that. Now, let's say it's addressed him as a pathetic, effeminate, closet homosexual dork. He wouldn't want that out there because he wouldn't want people to know him that way. So if he wrote the letter to himself, he would not have called himself those type of names. So Clark Kent knockoff is a very, very gentle insult. It's so gentle that even if people knew him as a Clark Kent knockoff, he wouldn't even be insulted by it. So that's the first thing, is it was way too gentle of an insult. The first line after Clark Kent knockoff is also very suspect. He wrote, "A simple Google search goes a long way these days, especially in Vegas." This is like exposition for the reader. Why would the person who found him, and clearly found him, have to let him know how they found him? Wouldn't this angry broker rather he wonder how his address was obtained? Instead, he has to mention, whoever wrote this letter, that he was found through a, quote, simple Google search. So that almost seems like it was written so a mass audience will read it and kind of understand how his address was obtained in the first place. The part that said, "Clearly you don't understand, real estate wasn't built by developers or investors, and it sure as hell wasn't built by tech guys in Lululemon." Again, very weak insult there. But the whole thing about real estate wasn't built by developers or investors? What are they talking about there? Brokers would never be angry at developers or investors. Developers and investors are complementary to the brokerage profession. It's not like they're in competition. So why would they even write that? They also seemed to be praising his company while outwardly appearing to insult it. So they wrote, "We did it the hard way, no shortcuts and no tech, just people." So when you read that, who would you want to use? Would you want to use the one that does it the easy way or the one that does it the hard way? So this old school broker is saying, hey, we did it the hard way. We didn't take shortcuts. We didn't have tech. We were antiquated. We're still antiquated. That's the way things should be. And he's like, no, I use AI, so everything's easy. So people read this. Who are they going to want to go to? Obviously him. So again, this is like an insult that's actually a compliment. And then enjoy your moment while it lasts. Again, just very gentle. Just saying, yeah, enjoy how well you're doing. You know, it may not last that long, but yeah, you're real successful right now. Enjoy it. Like, no one's going to write that. And then the part about don't get greedy because pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. So that's the threat part of it without directly being threatening. And I think the point there is that if you're not directly threatening anything, this letter is not illegal. It is legal to send anonymous letters to someone. It's not legal to send threatening letters in the mail. But if you send one that there's some plausible deniability that it's a threat, then it still is legal. So let's say someone got arrested for this. Their lawyer could easily argue that don't get greedy because pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered is just referring to the business. That if you get too greedy, your business is going to crash down. It could technically mean that. So this really jumped out at me as a hoax and self-sent letter and pig's head. I don't know where he would have gotten the pig's head, but keep in mind, this didn't have to be a pig that was killed. He could have bought this somewhere. He could have bought an already dead pig and just cut the head off if he sent it to himself. Now, I posted this on Vegas Casino Talk, and some people agreed. In fact, I don't think there was anybody on Vegas Casino Talk who thought that this was real. They said, yeah, you know what, I kind of felt this too, but I didn't want to say it. But yeah, this looks like he sent it to himself. Because it really does read like a pseudo-threatening letter which somehow still heaps backdoor praise upon him and his company. And any criticism is very gentle. Now, maybe I shouldn't be so judgmental, because I got a threatening letter in the mail about Vegas Casino Talk itself, the sister forum to Poker Fraud Alert. This is what it said. And I posted a copy of it on Vegas Casino Talk itself. Listen to how threatening this was. It said, "Mr. Druff, you need to take down your Vegas Casino Talk forum. Casinos were far better in the old days before sites like yours existed, which helped people learn how to beat them. Don't get a big head just because you're so handsome, brilliant, and personable. Pride comes before the fall. Stop being so interesting and informative, or you might be sorry." And then it's signed -N. His was -M, mine was -N. I'm kind of worried. I'm worried that this guy might do something. I mean, he thinks I'm interesting and informative, and I better stop or I might be sorry. And he said I have a big head just because I'm so handsome, brilliant, and personable? He doesn't like that? So that's the letter I got. I don't know, it kind of reminds me of his. Maybe it's the same guy. Now, there's a little twist here. Little bit of a twist. The twist is that there actually is an official person of interest for having sent that pig's head and letter, and it's not him. Channel 8 News in Las Vegas posted a picture of the person of interest because this guy was seen on video in the post office mailing that package. And the guy looks nothing like Mr. Clark Kent here. This was an Asian-looking guy with a pretty unique-looking face and a pretty good shot of him here. He's the person of interest. So you may say, well, Druff, then you're wrong. He didn't send it to himself. It was this Asian dude. However, there's a problem. Number one, still nobody has identified him. Number two, if he were a broker, then I think this would come out pretty quickly. And number three, he easily could have been hired by Blake Owens to send this to him. So maybe Blake Owens was smart enough to not be on video sending it to himself, and maybe he knew somebody who either was from out of the area and wouldn't be known, maybe even from out of the country. Let's say this guy was visiting Vegas from one of the Asian countries and was going to be back in Asia before he were to go bring this all to the police. So there can be pictures of him, but number one, no one's going to know him, and number two, even if they do, he'll be back in Asia by that point. So I bet it's something like that, where it's just someone who isn't worried about this. And furthermore, maybe if this guy was paid well enough, he doesn't care, because what was the crime here? It's not like he actually did something to Blake Owens. It's questionable whether that letter is even illegal. The strange thing is that nobody else besides people on Vegas Casino Talk has stated they think this is a hoax. But we think it. But nobody else has. Also suspect is the fact that I cannot find any indication that this company is really doing anything. You'd think if they're scaring brokers that they must be involved in so many deals around Vegas. I can't find any evidence of this. I don't see anybody discussing this company other than this pig's head thing. So prior to the pig's head thing, there was no third party I could find that was discussing this company, which is weird if they're so big and prominent and disrupting everything. There was an article in the Las Vegas Review-Journal from a few months prior about his company, but that doesn't mean that the company is successful. The thing definitely read like a paid advertorial, and it was supposedly an interview with Blake Owens, but the answers he gave weren't at all natural, and they were using language that was far too formal and detailed, even if he's a normally detail-oriented guy. It was just not the way anybody speaks. So clearly the author of this article was paid to send him questions that he chose, and he received them via email, and then he typed up carefully crafted answers to respond to them. And these answers were full of a lot of new businessy sounding buzzwords. So here's a good example. The Las Vegas Review-Journal supposedly asked him, what are your thoughts on the current business climate in the U.S. post-Trump election and tariffs? So he said back, we're living through historic volatility, which stems from deeper structural imbalances rather than a single administration or policy. In my view, turning points came in 1971 when we left the gold standard, and in 2008 with quantitative easing. Since then, our economy has run on borrowed time. This is a painful yet necessary correction, like ripping off a long overdue bandage. That said, I believe AI will help us handle the turbulence to usher in a modern Renaissance era in which cross-disciplinary, hyper-efficient generalists will thrive. You've got to be kidding me. Do you know anyone who talks like that? When you ask them, like, what's the business climate right now? And they say, AI will help us handle the turbulence to usher in a modern Renaissance era in which cross-disciplinary, hyper-efficient generalists will thrive. Nobody talks that way. Obviously here, he paid to have publicity in the past through an advertorial. Also, in 2024, they released a self-authored PR puff piece that's on a site called accessnewswire.com. And they claimed to have 2.0 billion in assets, which I highly doubt. I Googled them, and other than the recent pighead stuff and their own press releases, I don't see any discussion of them. So how could this company have $2 billion in assets and they claim $1 trillion worth of real estate deals? How do you do that and stay completely under the radar? So this whole thing really looks like bullshit to me. By the way, how hard is it to get these puff pieces, these PR puff pieces, pushed into publications, like real publications? Well, not very much. For under $1,000, you can use that Access Newswire site to get things like this pushed into various news outlets around the country. So that's probably what he did. So this guy has a history of trying to push stories about his company into the news. And now he kind of created his own story, if this is what he did with the pig's head, if it was really him. To me, the whole thing looks like bullshit. And I'm not just talking about the pig's head and the threat. The whole company, to me, looks like its influence, wealth, and abilities, and proliferation for that matter, are being wildly exaggerated. Keep in mind, this guy's only 29. Also, I know real estate brokers. I know some personally, and I can tell you none of them would be intimidated by this clown or his company. So I really hope the police find this weird Asian dude and get him to admit that he was paid a few $100 to send this. I asked Grok whether Agrippa is an influential real estate brokerage, and it went on for a few paragraphs, but then it noted at the end, these sources collectively indicate Agrippa's emerging influence, though much of the coverage stems from recent events in 2025. So it's admitting that all the coverage of this company is about the pig's head thing. That's very weird for a company that has $2 billion in assets and over $1 trillion in real estate deals. So I really think this is just an attempt to get his company attention. I just don't believe it. Too many holes in this whole thing, too many things that look like it's set up. A lot of times people, when they set things up, phony things up to make it look like that they're getting some kind of threats or anonymous insults that are sent to them, something people have a very hard time with is being too insulting against themselves. Because a lot of times the people who do this sort of thing are narcissists, and it's very hard for narcissists to bash themselves. There was a young left-wing reporter whose name is Lauren Duca, D-U-C-A. And for a short time in the 2010s, they saw her as someone with a big future in left-wing social media. And there were a lot of people trying to prop her up. And she got off to a good start. And she seemed intelligent. And she was attractive. And she was young. She was good at social media. So there's a lot that they liked about her, and they were really trying to push her to become bigger. They're trying to push her through social media channels to get more noticed, and it was somewhat working. But a few things took Lauren Duca down, and one of them was a report that when she was working at, I think it was the Huffington Post, that she was very abusive to underlings there and just to other coworkers, and that at one point she was believed to have sent out an email insulting like everybody in the company, but made sure to insult herself so it didn't look like it was her. So she didn't want to send out this email to everybody insulting everybody, but leaving herself out and having it be obvious where it came from. So the email did insult her, but it was very gentle the way it insulted her. In fact, in some ways, it could be taken as a compliment. So, for example, it called her a feminazi. So, okay, if you're a feminist and you think some deranged right-wing hater is calling you a feminazi, you're not going to be offended by that. You're going to go, yeah, I am a big feminist, and the fact that you think I'm a feminazi is a compliment to me. So it was like very generic insults like that could even be twisted into being compliments, and not anything that's just too biting and cruel. And if somebody hates you and they're going to be insulting you, they're going to try to focus in on what they think is going to really bother you, what you're going to find really insulting. So like in this case with this dude here, you're not going to just call him a Clark Kent knockoff. You're going to write something much worse. And really the same thing with Lauren Duca when she was caught, or at least they believe they didn't have the smoking gun proof, but they think they figured it out, that the insults to her were just very gentle. So a lot of times people have that issue when they write to themselves. It just really bothers them to think about people reading these insults and taking them to heart and believing these things about the person, or kind of seeing them that way. So that's often a sign that someone is sending stuff to themselves if the hostile stuff is not all that hostile. So this was all from early to mid-August. What has happened since then? Well, really nothing. And that's what makes me think that this is just going to die, because it ended up not a huge story. It was carried by national outlets, but then it kind of just died, and there's really no update beyond that person of interest. So I don't think that this is going to really do much for his company. I just don't think this is going to get him business. But on the plus side, I don't think they're going to ever really research to see whether he sent it to himself, which, by the way, may not have even been illegal, except perhaps the filing of a false police report, but maybe he didn't even do that. Maybe they came to him. But whatever it is, I don't buy it. I don't buy it from a guy who claims he has a $2 billion company with $1 trillion of real estate deals, and there's like no evidence of this at all. Nobody talking at all about this company anywhere. Okay, so that is it for the moment. It's 8 a.m. I think it's time to stop. I am tired. I cannot continue. You can probably hear it in my voice a little bit that I'm tired. I'm summoning some energy here to do this final outro here. The other topics I was going to do, I will table for the next episode, which I'll try to do soon. I know I always say that, but I'll try to do it soon, because I had more to talk about, and I just don't have the energy anymore. So I will actually cut those off the agenda. You won't even hear them in the archives, and they'll be in the next show. So I hope you enjoyed Poker Fraud Alert Radio, and we will have more for you very, very soon. Some people have asked me, am I going to be at the World Series of Poker in 2026? Because I was barely there in 25. Answer, yes, I will be. At least, so I think. So I plan. You never know. And I don't know what else to say. I'm just kind of tired right now. We're just going to let the Jeffers heads in here, and I will tell you, shalom.